On time. We have a lot of citizen input, and that's wonderful. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance for the Board of Commissioners meeting for February 23rd, 2022. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will begin the meeting today with citizen input. And thank you, Sharon, Keith, for very organizing our input this morning. The first people we'll hear from will be the Hunnell Road people. Tom Andrade, please. And you do have 3 minutes to speak.
Well, good morning, commissioners. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you. And I'd also like to thank the Hunnell United Group that has come to support us and listen to this conversation. My name is Tom Andrade. My family and I have lived on Hunnell Road since 1987. Each of you have a copy of a letter that was sent out November 22nd, 2020. It was sent to you. There are issues in there that I've highlighted. Those issues are still the same today that they were when we wrote the letter. The letter was never answered. In 1996, Deschutes County conducted a poll of residents regarding the maintenance and construction of roads in the county. And although none of our members were involved in that poll that we can tell, there were 2 very important items that came out of it. One was county rural residents wanted additional maintenance on roads. They were very succinct about that. And then 2, they wanted the roads to remain as rural roads, local roads. And that is a very, very important element to keep in mind as I go through this. Moving forward, in 1998, the commissioners reviewed the TSP, or the Transportation System Plan, and approved it as is. As near as we can tell, there was no notification sent to any of the affected Hunnell Road landowners, yet at the hearing, the commissioners approved the plan to upgrade Hunnell Road to a collector standard, whatever that standard was at that time. And I don't know how that fits with keep rural roads local, but obviously a collector is not that standard. Considering the impacts on the property owners and the fact that the attendants from Hunnell Road property owners did not attend that hearing, wouldn't that have triggered at least a question about why didn't people attend to testify, or more importantly, why they didn't attend the meeting in the first place? In light of the 1996 poll, why was the decision made to make Hunnell a collector? Was there no consideration to solve just the most pressing problem, and that is paving the dirt portion? Why did it take over 20 years to get around to paving a high-use, dangerous section of the road? My wife and I specifically asked for copies of any testimony that was presented during the commissioner's hearing in 1998. That question went unanswered. In closing, I'd like to stress the lack of public involvement and participation, not only from our members, but other members that use that same road for recreation and for other activities. Please consider the following. When Cody Smith sent a letter to Hunnell owners in February of 2020, advising of survey crews and the community working, the response was immediate. We called, we wrote, we organized, we asked for meetings, all in a collaborative effort to both understand what was being planned and try to work with the county to mitigate the impending impacts on all of us. I conclude by stating that had any of us been notified along any of the aforementioned decision timelines, you bet we would have been involved, but we were never notified. Thank you very much for your time and for listening. I would like to introduce Dennis Gann.
Yes,
Thank
Dennis.
you very much.
Thank you, Tom, for your testimony this morning.
Well, howdy, everyone. Thanks for listening to us today. My name is Dennis Gant. I've lived on Hunnell Road about 45 years. And in the spring of 2020, residents of Hunnell Road were notified by mail that surveyors may be on their property and in the area, and that those individuals were mapping the proposed planned expansion of Hunnell at the direction of the Deschutes County Road Department. Concerned residents called for a meeting with road department officials. We met in June of 2021 at the county offices. In attendance was approximately 10 residents, Mr. Doty and Mr. Smith, the department manager and engineers. The meeting was basically a Q&A with the county sharing information and telling us how it was going to be. There were opinion statements from residents. Residents' comments were not technically testimony, and many of us left the meeting feeling less than fully informed and felt the road development was a done deal and there might not be any recourse. Residents requested another meeting and asked Mr. Doty for that opportunity, and he stated that one would be arranged in September. Time went on and there was no call for a meeting. We checked back, things got postponed, and eventually a Zoom meeting was set for November 18th, 2021, approximately 5 to 6 months after the initial request. What was really lacking from the very beginning was a clear justification for this project. When we asked Mr. Doty for such a justification, his response that Hunnell Road needed to be connected to the grid and that residents in the neighborhood were underserved. The Huns do not feel underserved and would be quite happy if the project was just canceled. There was a meeting in 1998 when Hunnell Road was designated as a collector. No input from the public could be found in the records, and no residents living here at the time have voiced knowledge of such a meeting. There was no communication whatsoever. There was no traffic data of any kind, only an ODOT projection for 2030. Traffic numbers are required every 4 years. There have been none for Hunnell Road. There was no cost-benefit analysis initiated or instituted. We were told that in 2005, there was a meeting where some property owners desired paving from Bowery Lane to Local Road, and there is no record of such meeting. There was another meeting in 2012 when Hunnell was described as high priority. There was no public input. Once again, residents had no knowledge of the meeting. Mr. Doty said that designation came from the decision of the Planning Commission. No record of such a decision was made available to the Huns after asking for it. Between the June meeting and the November 18th Zoom meeting, the county never initiated contact with the Huns. The only communication was in response to resident inquiries. On February 9th, 2021, the Board of Commissioners had a board meeting. It was at that meeting that the board officially announced they were going through with the Hunnell Road Improvement Project. We were not told that the item was on the agenda and were not even invited to attend. The email depicting the criteria of the road design sent to Mr. Byard from Commissioner DeBone contains items that were never decided upon by the Huns. And thank you for listening to us. And we want to try and preserve the rural community. I mean, the road's got to go through. We understand that, but we'd just like it to be a slow 25 mile an hour through there so it doesn't become an old Ben Redmond highway. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, so much. Okay, the next person is Max Robertson, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Max Robertson, and I've lived here 50 years, and my wife had a home on the Hunnell Road address for over 35. We strive to maintain the quality and improve the experience for all the users of the Deschutes County transportation system. That is the mission statement of the Deschutes County Road Department. The words about, quote, improving the experience for all, end quote, do not live up to their billing as far as I am concerned. You have heard from Mr. Andrade and Mr. Gant detailing a chronology of events and a lack of communication from the county. The definition of communication, to quote the Oxford Dictionary, is to, quote, impart or exchange information or news. The county has done neither, in my opinion. Their only communication has been one-sided and only in response to HUN inquiries. And that's not the communication which should be happening. It's their job to talk to us. The Hunnell Road Development Project extends from Tunnel Road on the north, approximately 2.7 miles to south to Rogers Road. The area comprises over 260 homes. From personal residences on fully developed and small landscaped acreages to hobby farms with larger areas to agricultural properties on the north end, there are also homes on large acreages without agriculture. And these are only the people in the immediate area. These are our homes, our properties, and our families. They are at risk here because the county desires to put a 35-mile-an-hour road through the middle of it, straighten out the curbs, and change the existing terrain. And mark my words, 35 means 45 and more. Please reference this to the present speeds on the Parkway. The lack of past and present communication may be documented by our email threads, and that alone is contrary to an improved experience for all, to quote the county's mission statement. We are not mere users of the transportation system. We live here, and we have to live with it. The county has no right whatsoever to cease communication and do whatever they please at our expense. None. The project has gone out to bid. An engineering firm has been selected. Spring is coming and potential groundbreaking. More surveying has been completed. New flags and stakes are in the ground, and nothing from the county. There is way, way more to this than just stalled communication and ramrodded road plans, and I cannot cover it in 3 minutes. I'll save that for Mr. Baird. For me personally, my wife and I stand to lose at least 400 feet of our driveway. My mailbox will be on the other side of this so-called collector. How will my agricultural equipment make a left turn onto Hunnell and Pohaku as it is able to do now? I don't know. My domestic water main and shutoff will be on the underside and on the other side of this road. What happens should I have a line break? Who's moving my line? Where? Whose cost? Those are only the few of the questions that I have, and I'm only one person of many. Maybe someone in the other 259 might have a question. Commissioners, we know very little, and we are tired of asking and being rebuffed and getting nowhere with the county. We need your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Max. Thanks for
Thank you.
coming in today. Michelle?
Dear Commissioners, over 200 of our neighbors have expressed their frustration about not getting responses from the county regarding the design of Hunnell Road. Some of them are in the back of this room today, and many more wanted to come, but the room would have been too crowded. The previous 3 speakers have covered the extent of our frustrations and lack of responses. As a result, the Huns are requesting an open, special meeting with commissioners and Chris Doty, the director of the road department, to get some answers. We're your constituents. Please do not ignore our remaining requests and concerns regarding Hunnell Road. This is a defining moment to preserve a special area and community and prevent Hunnell Road from becoming another Old Bend Redmond Highway. Please, Commissioners, as you promised, work with us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Okay. I believe those, is there anyone else in the audience that does want to address Hunnell Road? I don't have a blue sheet from you if you do. Okay, all right. Now we have
I'll just take a moment to acknowledge, thank you very much. I understand. I feel the frustration. It is a big picture. It's been a long time coming. It has been on the TSP for many years. This is one of those connections that, has been envisioned, and it's getting real close to happening. So I understand the request for, a special meeting on this subject. I'd say that, there may be an opportunity for that. I don't know that the answer is going to be different, though. So, the expectations are trying to be laid out here on that subject, but the connection has been planned, and we are working together on this. I mean, we've been talking about it for a few years, so. I just want to leave it at that at this time.
Do you want to use a microphone, please, Michael?
I understand it wasn't a TSP, but what we're really asking is that you consider, we appreciate the fact that you made an effort to accommodate some of our requests, but we have a lot more requests and concerns that need to be addressed. And that's what we want to discuss on a special meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know, as driving your street, and as someone who's riding a horse once that got hit by a car, I mean, my husband was. Anyway, I get that you want to keep your rural character, and I know that 35 means 45. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So, I'm sure we'll be talking to Chris Doty individually after this meeting. Okay? So, Chris, I'm sure you're listening. And, no, thank you for coming in. I know it's got to be so frustrating when you think that government doesn't listen to you, and we do want to listen. So let's see what we can come up with, especially on this cold morning. The Simpson Avenue affordable housing, we have 7 emails opposing that. And we do have several people that have asked to speak this morning. Thank you all for coming. The first person is Craig Chenoweth.
Do you want me to go, or do you want to wait till everyone leaves the room
They're almost gone.
to settle?
Thank you, Chris,
Yeah,
or Craig.
I'll take my few seconds then to say thank you for taking the time this morning and allow us a chance to speak on this topic, so that way I don't cut into my
does someone want
3
to-
minutes.
Does someone want to close that door? Thank you. Okay, Craig.
Great. For the record, Craig Chenoweth. I live at 1945 Southwest Forest Ridge Avenue, which is adjacent to this property. I just kind of want to express up front that the brevity that's, I'm giving here is not really inclusive of all the topics that are related to this property, but in the interest of 3 minutes, and that's all that I have. I need to make the most of that, so I would welcome the opportunity to chat with each of you, and I would hope after this discussion and others and the emails that you received that you will be re-engaging the community and re-engaging the neighborhood association. I think it's fair. I just wanted to say that you've read through the emails that this RFP is grossly understated. It's very simplistic. It's not really poignant like you've probably had at other RFPs that are awarded to counties or affordable housing projects. This one is simple as how many units can you get, how fast can you slap it up, and how much can you pay us? You guys have totally missed the mark, I think, on this one for neighbors and community members that have utilized this property for a long time, enjoyed this property, treated it well. If you walk out, there's not a speck of trash on this property, I would bet. Maybe there's a few, but they've been good neighbors to you, and it seems like it's been kind of underhanded on us on how this has come about. I think you've missed the mark on the standpoint that you haven't done anything to look at the compatibility issues, the preservation issues, the existing landscape, and all the considerations that need to go into an infill development. I know you guys are not the developer on this, but handing it to a developer without kind of any sort of look at it at the RFP level is just not appropriate, I don't think, for a county commission or really any other agency that exists. I think as a public agency, you guys absolutely have the obligation to consider a larger picture here than to just sell the property and get as much money as you can. I think that you need to take into consideration on this RFP and build it out a little bit more robustly with feedback from the neighborhood. And I think that's a giant miss if you do not do that. Not as just the neighborhood. I don't want this to be a NIMBY situation, the community. and that sort of thing. I think there's a compromise that can happen here. I think there's an affordable housing component and understand, and maybe some ownership, something where it's not a 4-story apartment that goes on this property and looms over all the other properties in the area and removes every single tree and eviscerates the total topography on this property. So I think as an agency, you need to go back and figure out how you want to deal with this. And this is especially in light of the fact that you guys the property got rezoned, I think, through the UGB process, which is really almost under the cover of darkness, folded into thousands of pages, not really an inclusive process that you would have if a developer went through and zone changed this. So I would urge you guys to relook at that. The money does not equal success on this. You need to set us up for success. I guess I would just close with saying, the best example is if there was a fire and I'm in a room and I yell, "Fire," do I have an obligation to get people out the door and help people? Yes, I absolutely do. I would argue that you guys haven't even yelled fire. In fact, you're the first ones to the exit, and you have done nothing to help anybody get to the door or even make them aware that there's a fire. So the rest of us just have to perish while you guys are kind of looking back, waving with money in hand. And I understand the money will go to use, but you need to take consideration into that. I would ask that you withdraw the RFP and engage us as community members, or at least the people. I've heard nothing from you guys with really much of any substance regarding this issue, and we've spent a lot of time and energy to basically let the neighbors become aware of this situation, which they knew nothing about it, and if I had not stumbled upon it and made them aware, they had zero idea what was about to happen in this neighborhood. So thank you for the extra time, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from each of you a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Dana Wilson, please.
Thank you. My name is Dana Wilson. I have been a property owner in this neighborhood for 11 years. It's clear from the statements today, not just related to this, but also to the Hunnell Road, that this board has a lot of work to do to involve the public in their decision-making process. At a time when the public is desperate to trust our elected officials, you have an opportunity to demonstrate that you are worthy of our trust. Multiple citizens have reached out to you regarding this request, not just on the record, but directly to the board, and asked that you withdraw this RFP until design criteria can be added that will ensure this site is developed responsibly. We've asked the county to scale this project appropriately to the surrounding area, to protect open spaces, trees, and wildlife, to integrate design elements and preserve the corridor characteristics. Importantly, to engage the public in outreach. We'd like you to minimize the impacts such as noise and light pollution to the neighbors and ensure that affordable housing is actually delivered. I don't know if any of you have taken the time or effort to actually go and view what design proposals are being submitted to the city. You have access, City View, sign up for it, go look. Go take just a stroll through what is actually being proposed. This site, multiple of these designs are 4-story buildings, 300+ units, 300+ parking spaces. We're talking about an absolute, as Craig said, evisceration of this site with zero compatibility, zero effort to try to integrate with this neighborhood. If you really cared about affordable housing and the people of Deschutes County, and I do want to remind you, the city of Bend is in Deschutes County. The west side of Bend is a part of Deschutes County. These buildings are not enormous, they're titanic. They loom over the neighborhood. These designs have parking spaces pointed into neighborhoods, old established neighborhoods. A little row of vegetation isn't going to buffer this noise or light pollution for this neighborhood. You have an obligation that you're failing right now. You need to involve the public with all of the conversations, all of the conflict swirling all around us, not just in this room, but throughout our community. You have to show that you're listening and hearing what people are saying. We don't need your assurances that you're going to do the right thing. We need to see action. We've asked you to pull this RFP until you can add design elements, you can add the criteria that we need to show that you understand how your decisions impact the public. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Dana, for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks, we have a Michael Kalestev? I'm sure I mispronounced your last name. Could you spell it for me?
Alautzzsch.
Thank you. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Clouch. I'm also a homeowner in the corresponding neighborhood, neighbors with Craig and Dana. Really, the main thing that I just wanted to express my concern about is just the lack of inclusiveness with our neighbors. This has been a pretty well-established neighborhood. I think it was built in 1982, so a lot of the people that have lived there have been there since then. The big thing for us is ultimately we're not against the affordable housing that could potentially be going in that area. We just want to make sure that we're included in the overall design and we have a say with what goes there, because ultimately it will affect us, it'll affect surrounding areas, and we just want to make sure we're included in that process. So I'm along the lines with Dana and Craig where I think we do need to pull that RFP, and I think there needs to be input from us as a community to be able to have a say of what goes in there, and that's really all I have to say.
No, thank you so much for testifying this morning. Brian Gingrich? Gingrich? How do you spell your last name?
Gingerich.
Thank you so much. Couldn't quite read it.
Thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns this morning. I sent an email to all of you as well, which outlines where I'm coming from with this. I live at 1927 Southwest Forest Ridge. I've been there for 10 years. I've lived in that general neighborhood for close to 30. I've never opposed anything in the city of Bend or Deschutes County before, and I'm not really opposing this. But what I'd like to do is echo what I heard from the Hunnell Road people today and from my neighbors just a few minutes ago, which is this is an opportunity to include us in something and get ahead of it and put something together that we're proud of and can live with, as opposed to it being sort of waking up one morning and there's a bulldozer in my backyard. The legislative zone amendment or change is frustrating to me because it's a process that is exclusive. We don't know about it. We find out later. There's nothing we can do about it, obviously. I'm aware the property is going to be developed, and I'm not opposed to development. I would just like to be involved from as early in the process as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that's everyone, and we do have 7 emails too, so thank you for those. We have some emails here from CPACE. It looks like Todd, is it Gray? He should be here. Mr. Gray, is he available? Stephanie?
Yes, Todd Gray.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing me this time to talk about CPACE and give our support for potential to adopt CPACE in Deschutes County. As I indicated, my name is Todd Gray. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Mary Hotel Management and Vice President of Finance for Sycan B Corp. We have recently completed 2 hotels in the Bend community, our Element Hotel off of Wall Street and in Southeast Portland, Holiday Inn Express. They're also looking at a potential hotel in Deschutes County. And what I really want to say is, you know, from a developer standpoint, what CPACE essentially allows us to do is to provide financing, covers, you know, provides funds for us to build these hotels at a cost that is traditionally less expensive than private equity, a little bit more expensive than bank debt, but it's a source of funds that really do have the potential to turn a project that's marginal and potentially not feasible into a project that pencils and allows us to move forward. A great example of this is our Element project, where CPACE had the opportunity, if it was in place at that time, to provide 10 to 20% of the total capital stack in the form of pretty less expensive financing that would allow us to bring in less investment capital and do a project that otherwise might not make sense. It's, a process that's a known quantity. Clark County, for example, has had, one could argue pretty good success rolling out CPACE. And as we look at different markets, and especially post-COVID in this environment, where costs are higher, the cost of labor, the cost of goods, supply chain, timing issues, we need that extra little, bump to make these projects successful. So, all things equal, we're going to go to the communities where CPACE is in place. As we look, our footprint is the Pacific Northwest. As we look at another hotel in Bend, as we look at one in Hermiston, Oregon, if one county has CPACE and the other doesn't, given everything else equal, that county that offers CPACE is going to be much more attractive to the development community to enter into. Although, Bend is a terrific market, and we're quite pleased to be part of the community there. It's really, it's something that I know, there's a cost associated with. It's borne by the developer. Anything new can be scary, but I think there's a lot of good resources out there to get comfortable with it. And we would just, from the private development community, like to express our support for CPACE because it really can make a difference. And also, it aligns up with our sustainability efforts and goals, and is a good way for a public-private partnership to truly work and work how they should. So, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I do believe it will be coming on our agenda in the near future. Eric, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair Adair. For the record, Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. This item came before the board in December. The commissioners asked for some additional information. County Counsel Dave Doyle provided the board with a couple of update memos. I'll be packaging those updates and bringing it back to the board in March. I'll be happy to let the local folks know who are interested in CPACE on that date once we have it established. At that point, staff will be seeking board direction on CPACE. At that point, the board could not pursue CPACE. They may ask for more information, or the board may direct staff to draft an ordinance to implement CPACE. If there's an ordinance, there'll be a public hearing, and then if the board approves the ordinance, that ordinance will go into effect 90 days after board approval, unless the board approves an emergency implementation of that. And then the other thing is, of course, if the board passes the ordinance, staff will need to get a program started. There are other options that the staff will talk to the board about. There's a consortium of local governments that would like a statewide effort. There are pros and cons to that. That'll all be presented to the board in March.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. And is there a Perry Brooks available on Zoom? Okay, Perry, you do have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Can you guys see me now?
Yes, we can.
Great, awesome. All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to address the commission on the CPACE and the development of that program. My name is Perry Brooks. I'm a partner in a small development company located in Bend called Roost Development, and we build mostly multifamily projects. We encourage the Commission to approve CPACE and implement this invaluable tool for developers as soon as we can. This will help in developing funding strategies to inform performers and make decisions on building performance. As small developers, every dollar counts, and utilizing CPACE will help making performance decisions for the building, saving energy and water. We have currently 3, if not 4, projects that could immediately utilize the CPACE financing. And having utilized CPACE financing in a different state, it's an invaluable tool and very popular with the development community. And if we ever get to the point where we have RPACE for residential, that's also very successful as well. Simply thank you for the opportunity to talk about CPACE, and we look forward to working with you on that in the future.
Thank you, Perry, for testifying this morning. I appreciate that. And we do have one other additional email from Dirk Van Holling, so thank you, Dirk. Now we do have Donna Owen, I believe, is here, and she would like to testify.
Could I just take one moment to ask Eric, when you're preparing the memo for the new memo for CPACE, can you make sure to capture kind of near-term project opportunities? Because that will affect our decision on how we'd like to proceed on CPACE. You know, whether we would want to sign up with a state program, which will be a much longer process to get started, or whether we would want to initiate a program here locally more immediately. And to make that decision, it's really important to understand who's got an imminent project and who doesn't.
Sure, I'll be happy to include that in the staff report to the extent that we are aware of them.
Thank you.
So just a little bit of kind of questioning, just to lay it out there. So it was mentioned that, private equity, bank financing, or CPACE, maybe 3 ways to get to a capital stack for this, it's mentioned. I'd like to understand what the difference between bank financing and CPACE financing is, and if it's equity coming from a pool of investors with the intention on, having these environmental friendly additions to new construction, so where's that money coming from? Or, just to understand the market a little bit. And I'm just saying, this is a question I have. I don't know if we can, work through that a little bit.
Yeah, my understanding is the money really comes from the same place. It's more on how to secure the loan and the mechanisms of if there's a default. That's what I see as the main difference, but we could certainly go into more detail next month.
Yeah, so I've still got some questions. Great.
Okay. And Donna, do you want to join us now?
Mm-hmm.
And we do have 3 emails in supporting saving Worrell Park. And we did have, I believe, 41 2 weeks ago.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Donna Owens. Do you know when you feel passionate about something, you just can't let it go? And you've been hearing a lot of passion this morning on a variety of different topics. And I feel passionate about Worrell Park. I just can't believe it's even being considered to be redeveloped into a 68-space parking lot, and that 34,700 cubic yards of material from the park will be blasted away and hauled off with big equipment somewhere with, and these are your estimates, not yours, your staff's, 3,470 dump trucks. Those are 10-yard dump trucks, I guess. And be replaced with black asphalt, curbs, lights, irrigation, and plants that don't grow in Central Oregon unless they have to be watered, mowed, and likely fertilized, so that in some of your minds, it can still be called a park at the price of an estimated $2.5 to $2.8 million. How does this make sense? Why is this even an option? I urge you to reconsider your vote to direct staff to pursue a project RFP to redevelop Worrell Park into a parking lot. In 1997, the people in your seats, the county commissioners, made it a park, a county park, for the public to recreate and enjoy as open space. I urge you to let it stay that way, keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. And is it possible to have a Doreen Tai on Zoom regarding Bend Municipal Airport? Thank you so much.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Doreen.
Hi, this is Doreen. Thank you for letting me join today. And I'll try to keep it to 3 minutes, but it's going to be tough. So, thank you for the opportunity to speak and address a growing concern with the local general aviation industry at the municipal airport. I have no doubt I do not need to highlight the benefits, as there's been no lack of beneficiaries lauding praises. It seems there's some misunderstanding on who and how airports and subsequent activity are regulated and looked over, coupled with a lack of separation of duties and transparency. FAA Flight Standards and Safety District Office agents continually dismiss complaints of low craft, extra throttle, and excess elevation gain directly over homes as unsubstantiated. I responded to the last with disagreement, including images versus flight track and tracking websites. Comparing sites and images showed huge discrepancy in data versus visible location. I do have concerns with the safety of that, and also, to quote part of FAA's response, FlightAware and FlightRadar are other websites, are public websites that use existing radar data to produce the images, but if it's unreliable or glitchy, that's on them. That's not an FAA website. The FAA regulates the planes and makes sure they are following regulations. I've looked at your complaints and found no regulations have been violated that I can see. Keep in mind there's no FAA regulation regarding being a nuisance. Hundreds of thousands of training loops with extra throttle over homes is more than a nuisance. It's toxic. I often hear that if I don't like it, move, and that's what I get for living near an airport. To be clear, I live over a mile away, and there was not this type of flight activity prior to these flight schools deciding they were above tenant agreements and community responsibility. As the airport grows, so do the training loops, meaning how long until 3 miles won't be far enough away. And with all the wide open spaces here, why have these flight paths been developed directly over the few houses there are out here? Environmental justice issues seem to be an ongoing challenge with this industry. There are many communities limiting and or closing down their general aviation airports based on the community impact-led studies done at Reed Hillview and released this summer. Though to my understanding, the FAA has stepped in and demanded they stay open for another 10 years based on grant assurances. So what does Bend Muni do? Roll out the welcome mat and red carpet without regard to the humans, farms, landscape, and animals here. You can find the whole report online if you don't want to read it. There's a video. If our city, county, state, and the aviation companies themselves won't quit pretending there is no problem, like lead staying active in lived environments for 1,000 years or sweeping concerns aside, perhaps this technically advanced industry would begin to find coexistence solutions which address the real impact to people, wildlife, ecology, and livability instead of moving to smaller areas with less ability to take on this massive problem. And community leaders wouldn't be left feeling complicit in widespread harm to their constituents, leading to radical actions like trying to shut down airports. The EPA, FAA, DEQ, and more have endless stats on devastating impacts of noise, vibration, lead, PM2, and the other 200 plus chemicals in aviation fuel. Our city, county, state, country, and the world at large is tackling a reduction of emissions and pollutions, but bear in mind there is no amount of electric vehicle charging stations and use of less plastic that can offset the 1,000-year effect of lead, not to mention all the other environmental and wildlife destruction in this safe general aviation push. I actually ran across a website called Safe People Not Planes. I think it says a lot. Please address the transparency issues of holding separate meetings, as I don't see our community in airport meetings, a community that is likely affected through tax pollution, funding streams, etc., despite their lack of knowledge. Dig into the real costs of allowing this level and type of unabated pollution, and the business process which facilitates the silencing and dismissal of adverse effects while paving over farms to expand pollution and create discounted and or rewards for DVBE businesses, a true and undeniable environmental justice issue. as EPA, DEQ, and more have acknowledged minority and disadvantaged communities already sustain a much higher exposure to known pollutants. Meanwhile, we have an urban exodus moving here for a natural beauty outdoor mecca, quieter and slower pace. This creates incredible growing pains and challenges. I do believe we run afoul by meeting this challenge by growing pollution behemoths, inviting same revenue streams, and accepting grants to which consistently demonstrate a profit over people, wildlife, and landscape model. It's imperative we protect our fragile, drought-ridden high desert, people, animals, and landscape, which is precisely what makes our area desirable. Protect our farms and our people, and that which makes us sought out. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Did you want to give your address on the record? Can you do that? You don't have to say it out loud, but we don't have it on our blue sheet.
Yes, I will email it to you. Is that what you'd like?
Yeah, that would be fine. If you want to email it, that would be lovely. It just says Bend on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, do you see anyone else on Zoom? No hands. Okay, great. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for that testimony this morning. I do appreciate hearing from our community. The consent agenda?
Oh, okay, back to our,
Move approval of the consent agenda.
and I will second it.
Okay, further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So, first item is a public hearing. I believe Cody?
Good morning, Board. Chris Doty, Road Department, pinch hitting for Cody this morning. And I do want to add real quick that, you know, I've been eavesdropping this entire time and was able to take in all the information expressed from the Hunnell community. Naturally, I would have a response to that, but it's neither probably the place or time for that. So let me go ahead and jump into this agenda item. Board, this is a jurisdictional transfer to the city of Redmond, and I actually would like to share my screen. I've got a PowerPoint to walk you through here. And all right, can you see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. All right, so jurisdictional transfer to the city of Redmond for portions of Pershaw Way, Northwest 10th Street, and Helmholtz Way. And as a portion of this today, Board, you'll be conducting a public hearing. All right, so additional items, kind of want to walk you through some background information, discuss the road department's recommendation. You'll have the public hearing, and then also consider order 2022-005. So Board, the city of Redmond and Deschutes County have a joint management agreement that requires a transfer of jurisdictional authority for all county road rights-of-way that have been annexed by the city. And that's provided within state statute. ORS 373-270 provides the procedure for transferring jurisdiction over county roads within a city to that city. That first involves a formal request by the city, public hearing by the county, so we're here today to do, and then adoption of an order to surrender jurisdiction by the county. In terms of additional background information, the city has recently annexed territory within the UGB within several master plan developments consisting of Canyon Trails and Corbin Meadows. The annexed territory includes portions of several county roads, Pershaw Way, Northwest 10th Street, and Southwest Helmholtz Way. And the city subsequently, prior to this meeting, I should say, adopted a resolution 2021-36, making that request for jurisdictional transfer. This is a picture of the development off of Pershaw Way and Northwest 10th Street in North Redmond. This is just north of Elton Gregory Middle School, if you've been there. This is the Corbin Meadows development in Southwest Redmond, just north and west a little bit of Ridgeview High School. And you can see the segment of Helmholtz that will be transferring with this order. So the road department has not received any public comments regarding this item. So with that, board, our recommendation is that you adopt Board Order 2022-005. And when you do it, if you adopt it, the road segments will become City of Redmond streets at midnight tonight. Exciting. So at this time, board, we request, Board Chair, that you open the public hearing. And then after testimony, and subject to any testimony disputing what we're presenting, we request that the Board Chair close the public hearing and that the board consider adoption of Order 2022-005. And happy to take any questions.
Oh, okay, because on my sheet it says 2021-046.
Yeah, that was a typo. It's been corrected in this PowerPoint.
Good.
So the resolution, excuse me, the board order is that is in your packet is 2022-005.
That is true, it is. Okay, I will open the public hearing at this time. Do we have anyone in the room that wants to testify? Stephanie, do we have anyone on Zoom that has a hand raised to testify? Okay, all right. Are there any comments from the board?
I do have a question. So, Chris, this would be for you. What's the continuity of the ownership through there? Are we connecting other segments that are already maintained by the city?
So within the Canyon Trails development, this should perfect the ownership of all the roads to the south on 10th Street as contained by the city, or owned by the city, operated by the city.
The city's on both sides of the road?
On both sides of 10th, yeah. Anytime you annex a segment, it should include the entirety of the right-of-way, and I think we're fixing a little bit of that here with what was previously annexed on the east side of 10th Street. And then the segment of Pershaw will simply be a small segment that is adjacent, that is connected to a county road. So to the east of this Canyon Trails development, all the way to O'Neill Junction, that is within the UGB, but that area has yet to annex, but eventually will become part of the city and a city street. Everything mostly to the west of where this is shown will remain a county road. On Helmholtz, similarly, there will be just a short segment that will be a city street segment. We are working with the city to consider, an amendment to the joint management agreement, similar to the one that we feel we have with the city of Bend, that would have them extend ownership to the nearest point of city connection when they annex roads, so that the customer isn't driving on a county road, driving on a city segment for a little bit, back to county road, so on and so forth. However, we don't have that provision within the joint management agreement with the city of Redmond just yet. So that is something that we'll be working on in the future with them.
Yep, and that's kind of the concept I'd be understanding, because, going back and forth is awkward. Unless one is contracting with the other for maintenance.
Yeah, and we work together as operational departments.
Yep.
City of Redmond Public Works, the Deschutes County Road Department, and City of Bend for that matter, where we have similar issues on maintaining those segments, making sure they get plowed, treating them, with the appropriate amount of effort as we're driving through there, whoever has the majority piece. So customers, probably not going to notice anything different per se. But ultimately, we want the city to have that jurisdiction and make those decisions over road segments within their UGB in an orderly manner, so that, again, they can plan for their future and the road improvements they want to see. And, we don't have that discontinuity of ownership.
Yep, understood. Great, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Terry, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, no questions. Thank you for those questions, Commissioner DeBonne. Yes, continuity seems to be important in this point today, and it looks like we're talking about, 0.26 tenths of a mile altogether with the 3 allocations. So there's no other testimony at this time? None? So then could we close the public hearing? And any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'd just say that we've been hearing all morning about growth and then the strains of growth, and this is a real, in my mind, this is a really relatively simple decision, and this is all part of the orderly growth of the city of Redmond through the land use planning processes and the transportation planning processes that are prescribed to us. So I have no concerns about this transfer.
And I'm supportive also, so I'll move approval of order number 2022-005.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for sitting in, and we'll be chatting later.
Bet.
Okay, so item number 7. Janice Garceau or Shannon Brister? Janice?
Good morning, Commissioners. Sorry, I just.
You just ate something.
Gotcha.
Don't choke. Do not choke.
On that quickly. Good morning, Commissioners. Janice Garceau, Director of Behavioral Health for the record. I am going to hand things off to my very competent manager, Shannon.
Good morning, Commissioner. Shannon Brister-Ragas, Program Manager for Comprehensive Care for Youth and Families. We're here this morning to request for permission to apply for ESA stimulus funding in the amount of $149,167. This funding is as a result of Oregon Health Authority receiving a $3 million stimulus funding through American Rescue Plan and COVID Relief Bill. ESA, which stands for Early Assessment and Support Alliance, is for individuals experiencing their first episode of psychosis due to schizophrenia or schizophrenia-related disorder. And so very small population of individuals. It's one of the only tri-county efforts that we have. So we serve Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties. The ESA stimulus funding is very specific on what it needs to be used for. And our hope is to use that funding to really tackle some of the major challenges we have with individuals experiencing their first episode of psychosis through crisis support in terms of having places for individuals to go or be diverted to instead of the hospital. We reached out to the Bethlehem Inn, who was interested in negotiating with us a contract for some beds or purchasing those beds in advance, so that's available. We also want to use the funding to explore rental assistance, as we know it's really difficult to get rentals. And even when we do, if our clients have the ability to fund renting, it costs a significant amount just to get in terms of first, last utilities and all of that. So, and then finally, we were looking at some training and harm reduction along with the purchase of fentanyl test strips. We are in a national opioid crisis. We know we are losing individuals to fentanyl-laced synthetic opioids, and this is one tool that we can use to do that. Just for perspective, we had 68 clients in ESA last year. Of those, only 16% are hospitalized. However, that compared to our homeless clients that are in ESA, 50% are hospitalized. In addition, only 4% of our ESA clients are involved in the legal system, compared to 83% of our ESA clients who are homeless. So this grant is really going after just under $150,000 to be able to mitigate some of those needs and to be able to support our individuals for experiencing first episode of psychosis.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
I have one question. Is this the Oregon Health Authority's decision to go directly to ESA? Is that, so, I mean, that's
Yes,
kind of
Commissioner.
prescribed path.
Yeah, a very prescribed path that's laid out in the very first, it was kind of the very first segment. And there were 6 bullet points, I think: help with a vaccine, help getting healthcare coverage, buying food, rent, employment, and addressing substance use. So it was definitely a very narrow path.
Thank you.
So Shannon, I was really interested in the emergency lodging component of this budget, and I heard you mention Bethlehem Inn. Is that kind of your primary strategy under that line item?
Yeah, I reached out to Bethlehem Inn just to see if they'd be willing to have a conversation with me. We have precedent. They've done this with our FACT team, and they are willing to have a conversation. However, given that this is a tri-county effort, I also want to explore potentially resources in Redmond or Crook or Jefferson, and really kind of see if we can get a more centrally located space. We also have this, because this program serves individuals 12 up to 27, we may want to explore this with the loft or a child serving agency as well. So, but before I came to you guys, I wanted to at least have one viable option, which was that initial discussion with Bethlehem, who, again, like I said, has precedence of doing that with our FACT team.
So Shannon, the Bethlehem Inn in Redmond, I believe they're only at 8 today or yesterday when I was talking to Gwen, but they, that facility will have capacity up to 88 at some point in time. So, and that's, I would say, more centrally located.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And Gwen is my contact there. So she and I, if approved, will be having lots of discussions on how we roll this out in the most effective way and most centralized way. And again, I think Redmond is well, obviously the most neutral of the locations for the Tri-County effort.
So can you explain the fentanyl test strips to me? Because I keep hearing, we've had over 100,000 Americans overdose with fentanyl, or, it's a serious problem. And what does $1,000 of those test strips accomplish?
Yeah, so it's a test strip that we can give to individuals where they, obviously we're not testing any of the synthetic opioids or opioids in general, but someone who has an opioid addiction can be given these. And if they choose or if substances are involved, they can test the product before they use it. This would prevent potential overdose. It would prevent the use or need to use Narcan. So it really is a prevention. It is only effective if it's used, but it is one more tool that we can give individuals who are struggling with opioid addiction.
So how many tests do you get for $1,000 then? What does each one cost approximately?
Yeah, each test costs about $1. So we get about 1,000. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're not too bad. With Janice, our team is the first ones to roll this out within the county. Where actually the ink is still wet, so to speak, on the policy. It's at legal's review right now, but it is something that is being used pretty broadly nationwide, and so we're excited to have this as a resource for sure.
Well, I had heard that they were lacing marijuana with fentanyl.
Yeah, anything can be, and you can test anything with the strips. They're pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Shannon, you shared with us a couple of statistics about kind of homeless ISA clients versus non-homeless ISA clients, and I was trying to keep up, but I'm not sure if I fully grasped what the meaning or the implications of those statistics were. I think you were basically saying, a homeless ISA client is much more likely to have law enforcement problems or, major medical issues than a non-homeless ISA client. Was that the points that you're trying to make?
That's exactly the gist of it. So if you're involved in ISA, and again, we saw 68% or 68 individuals last year, and of those 68, only 4% are involved in the legal system as a whole. But if we carve out our homeless of that 68, which is about 9 people, actually all but 1 are involved in the legal system. So if you're homeless, you're much more likely to experience encounters with the law and end up in our judicial system, or you're much more likely, actually 50% likely, to experience a hospitalization. So what I'm trying to carve out is that if we don't invest in our homeless population, we are likely to see an increased cost in hospitalizations and in our judicial system.
Which is the reason why a big chunk of this budget is for emergency lodging.
Exactly.
Okay. All makes sense now. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for asking.
So do we have a motion?
I move approval of an application to OHA, the Oregon Health Authority Mental Health Block Grant Fund Program.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So thank you, Shannon. Thank you for
Commissioners, for your
those
time.
explanations.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Janice. And do we now have Kara, or Janice, will you be introducing the Telecare Mental Health Service?
I will again turn this over to my very capable manager, Kara Cronin, and just be in the background in case there are questions. So I'll mute.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Kara Cronin, Deschutes County Behavioral Health Program Manager. I'm requesting today approval and signature on document 2022-017. This is a contract with our local residential provider, Telecare, in the amount of $235,000. This $235,000 is pass-through funding from the Oregon Health Authority to pay for indigent clients requiring residential services.
So it's pretty exciting to be able to, have this 16-bed facility. I know that Commissioner Dare's been talking about, the state stepping up to have the mental health treatment beds. Could you put it in perspective? What level of care is this, I guess, is my question.
This covers our secure residential treatment facility, the 16-bed. So that's a locked facility, 24-hour staff, nursing, psychiatry, a step down from the state hospital, but very high-intensity services. This also encompasses our 2 residential treatment homes, which is a step down from that. It's 24-hour staff. There's not nursing. It's not locked. So it encompasses those 2 levels of care.
Great. So the kind of the different levels of care would be state hospital, residential treatment facilities, and then this.
State hospital, secure residential treatment facility, which is this, and then residential treatment facility as well. Those are kind of our three stages here in Deschutes County.
Got it. Thank you. And when Dave and I were talking recently about our civil commitment population, there was discussion about how if there's no state hospital space for people and there's very limited space at Sageview, how sometimes there was efforts to kind of route some of those people to, the next stage down or the next 2 stages down. Is that what we're talking about here? This is the place where sometimes people try to send people that really should be civilly committed, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not an adequate level of care for those folks?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. As you know, we haven't had a civil commitment in the state hospital in over 3 years. So when we civilly commit somebody, we're often looking for a placement that is like one of the Telecare homes or the residential or secure residential facility. So usually the acuity of somebody who's civilly committed is quite high, and the appropriate placement would be the Deschutes Recovery Center, the 16-bed facility. Sometimes they're full, and we are looking at other options and scrambling for other placements. But this is filling some of that state hospital logjam in our community.
And Kara, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this facility also helps us house individuals who are placed on Psychiatric Services Review Board or Security Review Board. I always forget what the S stands for. But these are folks that we are required to house in our community when they have been released from the hospital where they were placed because of a finding of insanity, and they're completing the conditions of their release in a secure, locked residential facility. And I believe this facility also occasionally houses our aid and assist population who has to be housed in the community when there's nowhere for them to go at the state hospital. So it is in particular the Deschutes Recovery Center, the 16-bed facility, meets a whole host of needs that are much larger than the beds available, and also serves people from out of the county on occasion who require placement here. So lots of need being met by this one location, and then in some instances by the step-down residential treatment facilities also supported in part by this contract and other dollars as well.
Correct, yeah.
You know, what I'm noticing is it's 16, and 16 is the number that's the federal limit of funding. And truly, maybe we need to ask Congress to increase that number of 16 up to 20 or 24 or something. But truly, yeah, limiting to 16 is not working in the world we have today. So, yeah, just, I'm like, okay, what was the magic of 16? Can one psychiatrist handle 16 people? Now, do they have to have a psychiatrist available 24/7? I know the facility in Hermiston actually closed in 6 months because they could not attract the right kind of help for the a 24/7 help in order to have the federal funding.
Yeah, licensing is licensing, and they have very specific requirements of staffing ratios, and it's been very hard psychiatry is always a real barrier to have consistent psychiatry, especially in rural areas. So, yeah, you're right. The licensing is 16 beds, and right now that's kind of the rule we're living under.
I know. I was just thinking, like, well, maybe we should try and increase that rule. Part of the issue, besides, trying to add a psychiatric hospital here on this side of the mountain so that we can serve people such as the civil commitments. You're telling me they haven't been able to go to the state hospital for a placement for 3 years. I'd say that's a bit long, isn't it?
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Kara. Are there any other questions?
I mean, I would put out a request that at some point in the future we have a work session where we explore essentially where we explore secure residential and residential treatment, how we get more. If it's, if this particular facility, they could add more. If the limit wasn't 16, it'd be great to understand that. But it's probably equally valuable to understand how we just have a complete additional secure residential treatment facility, like how that happens, so that if there's things that we can be doing at the policy level, at the budgetary level, at the legislative advocacy level, we can be doing those things to shore up the the residential treatment capacity in the region.
Commissioners, there are enormous things you probably could be doing to help us make that case at the legislative level. And I think a work session may be a really good idea about a place to start and identify both what we can do locally to try to prepare for funding that may be coming our way, and then address some of the real significant barriers to standing up these facilities, which are frankly some of the administrative burdens associated with the licensing agreements and just how cumbersome they've become, and the reimbursement rates for levels of care. They just haven't kept pace with what it costs to actually hire staff for these facilities or purchase properties in communities like ours where the cost of facilities is inordinately high. So I appreciate the curiosity about this, and I want to be helpful to you. And if a work session is in order, I think we'd be happy to participate. And if you would like to know who to connect with at the state level that's been working on these issues, we're happy to share that information as well.
Wasn't it Senator Lieber who did the bill for, I believe it was $180 million? And it was like a year ago. And I did have a
Yes, I believe-
conversation with her, and, yes. And she did tell me 16. 16 is the magic number because that's where you get the federal funding. So I'm thinking like, okay, we need to make 16 bigger, if that's where we get the federal funding.
I think you just make multiple 16-bed units.
Right, that's what I was thinking of, Deer Ridge. Do like pods of 16, because the buildings are there. We don't have to wait 8 years to build them.
Well, I know that, you know, our AOC director, Gina Nichols, got the long history on this stuff too. And in Deschutes County, we could also be thinking Eastern Oregon. You know, we already kind of provide that service for a lot of the Eastern Oregon kind of throughput of this healthcare system. So yeah, I'm just acknowledging that I support having a good session on it, so we're all up to speed.
Thank you, Janice.
And I mean, if we could do this not too far, start this process not too far off, we would actually be in a position to do some advocacy for the 2023 long legislative session. You know, because if you have bill concepts or other things, those need to be in the hopper way before January 2023 to actually go anywhere.
So commissioners, is the best vehicle then for me to work with Nick Lilac and Kara and any others on setting up a work session, or how would you like us, what would you like our next steps to be?
Set up a work section with Nick on our agenda conference, of
Well,
course.
and Eric Kropp, the health administrator at this time, right?
Eric,
Yes.
you will want to be a part
Well,
of this.
I would be working through, I will be working through Eric
Yep.
to do that. I just wanted to know, like, what's the opportunity and where would you like to see us show up?
And you know, if entities like AOC, MHP, or AOC, or those kinds of entities can actually track for us, okay, you know, here's the policy levers, but here's the people who are, you know, standing right by the lever and ready to pull it, and have been thinking about it already, that would be really helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, great discussion. I will move approval of this Telecare Mental Health Services of Oregon by document number 2022-017.
Second.
Is there further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, item number 9, looks like Kathleen and Trophy.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm here with Kathleen, seeking consideration for board signature of the Primus Health Agreement, document number 2022-57. This is for the Deschutes On-Site Clinic Health Center. I'd like to give you a little background on our current operations and what we do over there. As you guys are aware, the county is a self-insured health plan. This allows us a lot more control over the costs on our health plan, and it also allows us to customize our health options through our health plan, including services at the doc and the doc pharmacy. This model has worked very well for us over the last 10 or so years to keep our healthcare costs down. The health center and pharmacy have been in operation, as you guys are aware, for about the last 10 years. We have a very high utilization over there. The health center runs at almost full capacity most of the time. A majority of the prescriptions that are filled for our folks that are on our health plan are filled at our pharmacy. We also provide extensive wellness services through the doc health center, which are utilized by a majority of our folks as well. We also provide medical staff over at the Juvenile Detention Center. That's part of the staff that works at the clinic. They also provide staff over there as well. So last year, the county requested proposals to take up operations of the health center and/or pharmacy. So we did that last spring. We actually had 7 vendors, providers submit proposals, which was great. Both of our established providers submitted proposals. Primus Health is one of those. They operated our pharmacy. MedCorp was operating our clinic. Through the selection process, we awarded those contracts, both of them, to Primus Health. They had submitted proposals to operate both the clinic and the pharmacy. We have a long-standing relationship with Primus Health. They're a great partner with the county. They've provided great service through the pharmacy, and we anticipate that they will continue that through the pharmacy and now with services at the clinic. So they took over operations of the clinic January 1st of 2022. If you haven't been over there, you've probably seen the refresh that we've done, new flooring, upgraded, repainted. They brought in new automated systems, so they're up and running over there. We have been working with them under a letter of agreement, a 60-day letter of agreement that expires on February 28th. We were doing that until we could define the scope of services that would be offered over there. It's a pretty robust scope of services that are offered at the clinic and juvenile detention and at the pharmacy as well, and we wanted to make sure that we captured all of those properly. Over the years, it's kind of grown and expanded, and we wanted to make sure all of those services were captured in the service agreement, so that's what we've done. So now we're asking the board to approve those agreements. We actually have two separate agreements, and you'll see on the agenda, there's two separate agenda items. One is for the clinic, health center, and the other is for the pharmacy. And the reason we had to split those out is because Primus works with Walgreens on the pharmacy side, so that necessitated an entirely separate agreement. We were hoping we could combine the two into one, but we had to split it out into two separate agreements. So on the Dock Health Center side, the services that are provided over there are for employees and dependents that are on our health plan. That includes COIC, we partner with them. Their members are also on the health plan. Black Butte Ranch, we have a small number of folks at the Black Butte Ranch Sheriff's Office out there that participate on our plan. Also, all of our retirees that elect to stay on our plan as retirees can use the services there. And then anybody that's on COBRA that has left the county, they have up to 18 months of continued coverage if they elect, and they can continue to use those services. This model over there has allowed us to really control our healthcare costs. It's convenient for our members on the health plan. It's easy for them to get in. There's not a long wait time. They can go over there and get primary care. They can have their lab work done there. And then they also have limited urgent care services over there as well. As I mentioned before, we also have an extensive wellness program. This is more on the prevention and management of chronic conditions, which is another great way to help keep our healthcare costs down. If we can manage these chronic conditions and keep people happy and healthy, it really saves us on the healthcare costs. And they also provide work-life balance. All the services they offer over there help people stay active, fit, and just, hopefully living healthier and keeping our costs down. The health center also provides staff, as I mentioned, over at the juvenile detention center, so there's some limited medical staff over there, and that would also be provided by Primus Health. So that's the health center side, and I'll pause there, and if you guys would like to consider or discuss the health center.
Well, great bullet points. We do know that it's been a great investment, the 10-year history on this. This is switching the contractor, kind of the business case behind it, but it's the staff over there being able to help make connections with our staff and, think about the long-term health of everybody. Keeping it cost-effective is the goal, bending down that total cost curve, which has been pretty valuable through the last 10 years, so pretty darn exciting. I look forward to everybody getting back to a kind of a health maintenance mindset after a couple of years of a worldwide pandemic. So that's our next step, probably our next job to do for each person.
Right.
And it's nice to hear that it's been refreshed.
Yes.
And truly, I hope more people are using it. the fact that we have so many elective procedures in this area that haven't been done. People really need to get back to taking care of themselves, the whole person. So thank you for this presentation.
I'm a big fan of the doc, and sounds like this was a sound process for award of this contract. I guess the only thing that I'm a little puzzled about is if Premise has been operating the docks since January 1st, why are we doing this now as opposed to sooner?
Right, so the service agreement, it's our standard service agreement, but it was the actual scope of services that was a very big lift. And there was a lot of negotiation back and forth on what they could provide over there, because the previous provider, MedCore, had organically grown the services over there, and a lot of that was not captured in the existing contract, so we wanted to add that. We also wanted to make sure we captured all the reporting. One of the big things that we wanted was to make sure that they could demonstrate a return on investment over there, and that's one of the current, the previous provider couldn't really do for us, so that was something, and we've been working on this service agreement for months, and we came down, we got to the end of the year, and they were coming in, and they were going to start operations, so we figured let's do a letter of agreement for 60 days, and then really hammer out this service contract, the service agreement, to make sure that we captured everything properly. So yes, this should have been in place before they took over, but we worked with legal and had this service agreement in place, and I think now we've got this very robust contract that captures everything that we want. One of the big things, as you guys are aware, we wanted to keep our staff, and that was they wanted us to have a non-solicitation clause in there, so we negotiated back and forth and finally got that removed, so that if down the road we switch to another provider, the staff can stay if we want to keep them. So that was one of the, I wouldn't say sticking points, but it was one of the things that we kind of had to come to an agreement on, and that's why it took a little longer.
Thank you for the question.
So then, just one other concept, the kind of the total budget for the next 5 years. Are there, this is for the clinic itself, is it, pretty stable budget? Because it shows the escalation in the total expenses lines here, but my point is it a variable that, I got to imagine it could be variable, because there's just a lot of moving parts in the world.
Yeah, so they're fixed expenses, which are like their admin fees and everything like that. Those are capped at 3% annually. The variable costs, which are supplies, the lab costs, things like that, are variable, and yes, they could go up. We feel that we've done a really good job of predicting where there's going to go in the next 5 years, but we have capped those fixed expenses to try to minimize that. But yeah, there's the unknown.
Yep.
What are suture kits going to cost?
Going to happen, yes, understood.
All of that good stuff.
Well, and thanks.
All the products made with petroleum and how that's going to.
Right.
Right.
Everything.
There's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be all over the place.
Well, and thanks for the partnership and legal's help on this. I'm sure it was a big lift, and very focused to try to really get it over the finish line here in the 60-day period. So thank you.
I'll move approval of board signature of Premise Health Agreement document number 2022-057 for the Dock Health Center.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so now we have the pharmacy.
So again, we are seeking consideration for board signature of the Premise Health Service Agreement document 2022-058 for the Dock Pharmacy. I gave you a lot of background on the pharmacy as well. The pharmacy was operated by Premise Health already. We have a long-standing relationship with them. They were already coordinating with the Dock Health Center, but now that they're under the same roof essentially as the same provider, there will be a lot more coordination of care. So we actually had them install, we call it the BAT phone, where the clinic can actually call over to the pharmacy if there's a prescription, and they can write the prescription right away and fill it, and then the patient can go right over from the clinic to the pharmacy and get their prescription filled in usually less than 5 minutes. So it's a great service. All of the drugs that are dispensed out of the pharmacy are wholesale through our pharmacy benefits manager, Northwest Pharmacy Services. So we're able to reduce the costs there. Our employees aren't going out to, your Safeways and your Bi-Marts and your Costco's and having to pay that markup. So we're actually saving costs by dispensing the prescriptions out of our pharmacy and able to keep the co-pays down for the employees, and in turn save the county money on prescriptions by dispensing them there. This, as with the clinic, it's exclusive, even though it says Walgreens Pharmacy on it. It's only utilized by members on the Deschutes County Health Plan and their dependents. And then, as you guys are aware, we have the over-the-counter offerings over there that, again, are at wholesale, so it makes it convenient for employees. When we can get the product on the shelf, it's been a challenge keeping those shelves stocked like everybody else is having challenges with. But we have that little over-the-counter section as well, too. So not a lot changing in the pharmacy. We'll continue on with the same level of service there, but now it'll just be a lot tighter coordination with the health center.
Great. Well, I'll move board signature of the Premise Health Services Agreement for document number 2022-058 for the Doc Pharmacy.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thanks for giving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 11. Carolyn House.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's
Hello.
great to be here in person. It's been a while since I've been over here.
At least that you could walk. It was.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, who knows if the temperature was low, but.
Yeah, it was a little treacherous getting across the sidewalk there, but I made it. All right, so the next item before you is a consideration on whether or not to hear an appeal of a hearings officer decision for a template dwelling in the forest use zone. Next slide, please. The proposal is located at 59770 Scale House Road, so this is just south of the city of Bend. And the High Desert Museum is just to the west. And I did get a request from Commissioner Chang for some maps, so I did prepare a few, and if that's all right, I was going to distribute them now and kind of walk through a little bit more about where we're talking.
You need to hand them out while you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline, did you say that the High Desert Museum is just to the west?
Correct. So between Highway 97 and the property that's identified in red here, the High Desert Museum, it's comprised of, I think, 3 tax lots, but that's their property. So generally the surrounding land is split up into 40 to 240 acre parcels. And then on the west side of Highway 20 is the Deschutes Riverwood subdivision. Of the properties that are on the same side of the highway as the subject property, 3 of those have dwellings that are somewhat adjacent or nearby the subject property. So the applicant requested and has obtained a hearings officer approval for a single-family dwelling on the property, and the requested dwelling type is a template dwelling. So the county's procedures ordinance sets out the items that the board can consider when determining whether or not you want to hear the appeal. The first is the record that's been developed as part of the hearings officer proceedings. So the county has an established website where you can view that information. In addition, you can review the notice of appeal submitted by the appellant, and then you can take into consideration any staff recommendation. So I've summarized the issues on appeal here, but the first issue is the appellant believes the applicant has not demonstrated there's a long-term access agreement to the subject property, and that's a requirement for this dwelling to be approved. Additionally, the appellant believes that a property line adjustment that was approved by the county in 2013 undermines a private easement agreement that the applicant needs for access to the subject property. In addition, the appellant believes the applicant has not demonstrated compliance with the template dwelling test requirements. And they also believe that the residential use will have significant impacts on the applicant's tree farm and the cost of their forest practices or to operate on the site. And lastly, the appellant believes that their residential use will increase fire hazard and fire protection cost. So staff recommends not to hear the appeal for 3 key reasons. The first is that the hearings officer decision is well written and reasoned, and the record or is supported by evidence in the record. Secondly, the appeal issues are primarily matters of state law, and it's unlikely the board will be given deference if an appeal is filed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And lastly, both parties were well represented by land use attorneys as part of the hearings officer proceedings. And I'll go ahead and note too that both the applicant and the appellant haven't requested or made a strong preference for the board to hear this appeal. The applicant specifically is requesting the board not hear the appeal because of the extra cost and time for that proceeding to occur. And my understanding is the appellant doesn't have a strong preference. So the board's options is there's 2. One is you can hear the appeal. Generally, de novo hearing format is how that would be heard. But you could also have it be a limited de novo hearing or an on-the-record hearing. The second option is the board could decide not to hear the appeal, in which case the hearings officer's decision becomes the county's final decision on this application. And I'm available for any questions.
So if the appellant has not, did not express any preference for us to hear it versus it going farther, have they indicated that they will pursue their appeal farther up the chain to LUBA if we don't hear the appeal?
That's my understanding, but I haven't been in direct communication with them. I see county legal counsel is now pulled up on Zoom, so I don't know if Adam Smith has anything he wants to add.
Adam?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Adam Smith, Assistant Legal Counsel. I've had communications with attorneys representing both the appellant and the applicant, and I think both parties fully expect that this matter will proceed on to the Land Use Board of Appeals, which is, I know is informing their decision to ask that the board not hear this matter. As Caroline noted, the applicant is, I would say, strongly asking the board not to hear this matter. They concur that the board is unlikely to receive deference and that the hearings officer decision was well reasoned. The appellant, on the other hand, also agrees that the board is not likely to hear deference. I'd say they're more lukewarm on the board hearing the matter. As it was expressed to me, if the board believes that there are compelling policy issues that you want to address, they don't have any objections to you hearing the matter, but otherwise they concur that this is likely going to get resolved at the Land Use Board of Appeals or the Court of Appeals.
Yeah, when I read the hearings officer's decision, I had concerns about a couple of the findings that the hearings officer made. The question of does this force a significant change in or significant increase in the costs of accepted forest practices on forest land? The hearings officer, conclusion was, if the appellant is trying to do prescribed burning, it doesn't really affect them very much having this new residence there. I actually think that is just kind of understanding the way that people feel about fire, I would actually be quite concerned that it would have a significant effect. I mean, if, having a vacant piece of land next to you versus having a home next to you, I could imagine in many cases the adjacent, the new homeowner being very concerned about prescribed fire near their property. So that was one concern or question I had, and similarly, I think having a home there really could affect fire suppression costs. When an incident starts and firefighters are trying to determine whether they're going to go in and do a direct attack or an initial attack on a fire or not, and how fast, they really do consider what kind of property values are there, and having a home there versus a piece of forest makes it a different decision. So, and then the third piece, the soil productivity determination, I wasn't totally convinced by the hearing officer's conclusion that that this would be less than sorry, I'm forgetting what the increment is, but less than 50 productivity location versus a 50 or above productivity location. So I came into this with some concerns and possibly an openness to hearing the issue, hearing the appeal, but understanding that this is these are issues of state law. They're not our code issues, and B, that the appellant doesn't really have a strong preference for who hears the appeal. I'm with that, knowing that, I'd be comfortable just passing this on, moving this along to the next stage as well.
So did you have any comments, Commissioner Vaughn? Is that a motion then?
And Commissioner Chang and Chair Adair, I do want to note that I did want to make a correction on the recommended motion. At the end, we need to add, after file number 247-2100756CU, it should also read, and appeal number 247-22-000106A, which is the appeal that's been filed.
Would you mind repeating the appeal number?
Absolutely. 247-220-000106A. And that's reflected in the order. I just missed it in my staff
Thank you.
report.
The order I have in the packet is 109A.
Right, that's what's right up above.
Oh, sorry, did I?
Was it 9 or 6?
I'm just confirming on our electronic system. I apologize. It is 9. So 109A. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
In answer to your question, I'm not in a rush to make a motion if there's more discussion to be had.
Okay.
Well, so the only observation is this, with the High Desert Museum here, and if there was ever development there, they may be impacted by the sawmill noise. I don't think that's part of this, though.
Oh, the sawmill, yes.
Yeah.
Well, they don't run it that often.
I'm just joking around. Well, I do come to the same conclusion, though, about denying review in support of, both parties, and especially the applicant's, acknowledgement that if it's going to LUBA, let's get it to LUBA. So I'll move order number 2022-008, an order denying review of the hearings officer decision on the files mentioned. There we go.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Laura. Hendrick.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Whitney Hale, Administrative Services. I'm here with Laura Skundrick, and we're here for Q2 performance measure updates. I'm going to go ahead and provide a brief introduction and then turn things over to Laura, who's going to lead us through today's overview of performance measure updates, and she'll be managing performance measure updates from here moving forward. So today's kind of our handoff as we transition this project and process. So today you're going to hear from a variety of departments with performance measure updates that tie to the board's goal of healthy communities. And this continues kind of our new framework for this year, where each quarter we're highlighting a different goal and updates that occur underneath that goal. Later today, you'll receive an email from me with a draft of our performance measure dashboard, which is very close to being ready for public launch. We were hoping to demo it for you today and caught a few things right at the 11th hour that I think we need to work out, but we will get you a link for your review. And then moving forward, we'll be using the dashboard as kind of the tool that we use to walk through quarterly updates. So I just want to acknowledge a lot of work that's been done by our IT staff to make that a possibility. And it's looking great, and a lot of work by departments to feed into their data into the dashboard. So we're really excited to get that online as a tool for you and also for members of our community to be able to engage with our data. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Laura to walk you through Q2 updates today. And I know we have a variety of staff that will be joining us as well.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Laura Skundrick, Administrative Services. So as Whitney mentioned, today we will be highlighting the goal of healthy people. And so we will start off with the objective of support and advance the health and safety of Deschutes County residents. And we have two measure updates today that fall under that objective. And so we will start with Public Health Program Manager Rita Bacho and Public Health Nurse Debbie George, who will talk about the timeline of communicable disease investigations.
All right. So I'll go first, and then Debbie would add. So for our unit, communicable diseases, our performance measure is reduce outbreaks and spread of disease by completing 95% of communicable disease investigations within 10 days, as defined by the Oregon Health Authority. So the target is 95%, and in Q2, that is from October 2021 to December 2021, the CD team investigated 11 out of 11 cases within 0 to 10 days. This translates into 100% of CD cases investigated within the required OHA time frame of 0 to 10 days. These cases included 1 chronic hepatitis B case and 10 other communicable diseases. 100% of these cases were interviewed within days 0 to 4. And for cases that were reported through our electronic lab, 97.4% of those cases were created within 1 day. The goal set by OHA, as I mentioned earlier on, is for us to be able to investigate at least 95% of certain communicable diseases, which include chronic Hep B, pertussis, and the enterics like Shigella, toxin, E. coli, Salmonella, and Yersinia within 10 days. The Deschutes County Communicable Disease Unit has exceeded this goal by investigating 100% of cases within 10 days. And if you have any other thing to add, Debbie, go ahead.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
I'll just acknowledge that this is kind of the business that's why the health authority and the partnership with the county health, this is what we do. And, COVID obviously took over for the last few years, but, thanks for being able to respond and do it so well. The 100% level is wonderful at this point, but this is kind of the basic core service of public health here at Deschutes County.
And thank you for being able to do that during COVID while we were trying to do case investigation on COVID at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. So next, under that same objective, we have Environmental Health Supervisor Eric Money with us on Zoom also, I believe, to talk about licensed facility inspections.
Good morning, Commissioners. Eric Money, Environmental Health Supervisor.
Hello.
Good morning.
So for 2 years, our environmental health field staff have been redirected to our health services COVID response. The metric for the second quarter of fiscal year 22 shows the field inspections that under normal circumstances would be required. For the past 2 years, there have been several times where the Oregon Health Authority asked county environmental health staff to discontinue field inspections for the safety of our staff as well as the business staff at different surge times. So the metric that you're looking at only includes routine and follow-up field inspections on food, pool, and lodging facilities. So the board knows of the field inspections that we're not doing and why. What I'd like to highlight is the work our environmental health team has conducted during this 3-month period. So there were 591 business outreach responses in this 3-month period related to COVID cases, and then we also responded to 70 complaints. Environmental health and the COVID response team investigated 28 COVID outbreaks, and there were 10 new public water systems that we processed for new subdivisions in Redmond. We conducted 14 public health plan reviews on remodeled restaurants or new restaurants, new caterers, and new mobile food units. We did 6 pre-opening inspections approvals on new food, pool, and lodging facilities, including Mary McCool's swim school, which is, I don't know if the board remembers the history there, but that was a pretty amazing thing to have happen in our county. We also were able to do 60 school lunch program field inspections and 15 routine inspections at childcare facilities that were conducted virtually. So the last thing I'd just like to share is that we really want to get back out in the field. We're hopeful that with the lethality and virulence of this virus lowering and cases going down, that we can get back out there in March and start doing the foodborne illness prevention in the field at food, pool, and lodging facilities. And I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
So you mentioned the water systems in the subdivisions. Is that a new well, or just when a subdivision's happening and the water systems being extended for Redmond?
In Redmond, those particular 10 that came on board at the end of last fall and early winter were the Redmond water system. So it's Redmond's water system, but they're distinct water systems that are for these 10 new subdivisions in Redmond. So not a new well necessarily, but new distribution lines extended to serve each one of these 10 subdivisions. So they are their own separate public water system, but the source is the Redmond water system. Yes.
Understood. Great. Okay. Thank you.
So Eric, I heard 2 things, and I'm trying to kind of assess the weight of each of them. So one thing that you said was that there were some significant chunks where OHA asked environmental health specifically not to be doing inspections because of COVID safety. And then I'm also reading here that environmental health staff time is being absorbed by COVID response. So is it, both of those things, or is that accounts for kind of lower inspection levels, or is one much bigger than the other? And if it's the staffing, then I have a follow-up question.
Well, it was kind of at the same time as the state was asking us to step away from doing field inspections for staff safety. There were 500 to 1,000 cases per week, and when many of those work in businesses, our environmental health response was to do these reach out to the businesses, and so it was sort of at the same time. And obviously since our staff wasn't doing field inspections, we worked really closely with the communicable disease and the COVID response teams to say, hey, what's needed here? And overwhelmingly helping businesses sort of navigate the interpretive guidance from the state, as well as helping them figure out what to do if there was an outbreak or several cases in their business. That really took up a majority of our time, in addition to these other businesses which weren't experiencing problems and said, hey, I want to get my new restaurant open, or I want to get my new food truck going. Right. So Commissioner Chang, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So my concern was, so it sounds like some of the COVID response was, COVID response that the environmental health team is uniquely suited for, because we have expended resources to kind of swell this temporary this pool of temporary labor for COVID response, but hiring another call center person doesn't necessarily take some of the COVID load off of your team, COVID response load off of your team, because you're doing specific business and specific business location related investigation type work and technical assistance. Is that accurate? Because what I would hate to learn that we just didn't hire enough temporary staff, to be able to kind of offload some of the COVID pressure off of your team so that they couldn't do their core regular work. That's my big concern.
Well, that's the thing. The essence of environmental health and field inspections is obviously going out in the field. And so we were able to help. I don't know if there were, I'm assuming other managers would know if we had enough on-call temp help for the COVID response. Our team was able to assist, and I'm really, really happy that we were able to do that. And it was a lot. There were many days where each field inspector, and there's eight of us, that had 8, 10, 12, 15 calls a day, doing this reach out. We had the ability to do that, in part because the state said, please discontinue going out in the field. I'm hoping that this is not going to be the case moving forward, that we will be able to get out in the field and start doing the inspections that the public expects us to be doing, and so that they can get on our website and review the inspections at the different food pool lodging facilities in our county.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you for pivoting to provide important strategic services that were appropriate to pandemic conditions.
Thank you.
So the performance measure says, reduce outbreaks and foodborne illnesses. And obviously the target and the update is, they're very different percentages. But, do we have was there any increased risk that was like, oh, yeah, we didn't do enough here and we saw foodborne illness or outbreaks from food establishments? Is that something we could ask about here?
Thankfully, we have not had any foodborne illness outbreaks that we've investigated.
Yep.
there have been some issues, multi-state outbreaks with onions, but that we had to investigate in 2020 to make sure that we didn't have any salmonella cases in Deschutes County or figure out where they got the onions from. But there have not been any outbreaks. There have been obviously COVID outbreaks in different facilities, but no salmonella or E. coli or different sort of foodborne outbreaks that we've had to investigate.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
Good morning, commissioners. This is Nahat Sakrazavi, the Director of Public Health. What I would like to highlight is that some of that is function of luck. So it's important to keep that in mind because our regulatory and education role in the community is critical for maintaining a level of standard, safety standards for the businesses and for the community members. So some of this, the fact that we haven't had multiple foodborne outbreaks could be a function of luck. Some of it could be a function of frankly, the functionality of the businesses themselves and how they have managed internally the demand and the supply. Some of it is the ongoing remote support provided by our team and the way we pivoted to adjust to the new realities. So I'd like to acknowledge multiple factors that could be driving this phenomenon.
Well, I can imagine it's going to be real important in the near future because of the great rotation or reset or whatever's happening. There's going to be some new food workers that haven't done this before, so they'll be looking for a little bit of education and best practices.
I do have a question for Eric. Nice to see you this morning, Nahad. Eric, you said you do have 8 field inspectors, and you are looking forward to, let's say, March, you're going to get out and back to what you really do. So how is your little department then? Is it fully staffed?
Well, we're trying to get the volume of inspections per full-time employee down to a reasonable number so that they're not having to do really fast inspections. Really fast inspections are not really thorough inspections. To that end, May 1st, we are hiring an environmental health specialist. She'll be coming on board, and we're going to be thrilled to have her and get her trained up. And so as far as field inspections on food, pool, and lodging facilities, adding another full-time inspector will really help reduce the volume of inspections that have to be done so that we can be very thorough, because a thorough inspection is really what the public needs, not a fast inspection. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Adair?
It does, because my purse fell under a table one time at a restaurant, and it made me so nervous. So anyway, I do really appreciate that you are out there doing what you do.
Are you saying it wasn't clean under the table? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was very disappointed. You know, it's just like when you go to a restaurant, how clean are the bathrooms? It's just all those little important things, because you want your food to be prepared in a cleanly way. So I do think it's important, and you see a lot of new restaurants opening in the community, and maybe they're not open 7 days a week like they were, but still, and there's some new people that are doing the preparation. So I look forward to you getting back out. So when you get that new hire May 1st, then will you be at 8 or 9?
We will be at 9.
Okay. Did we not approve that before?
That's what I was going to ask about.
Yeah,
We had some discussion of the ratios during our budget hearings last year, and I was just curious after you get that person hired, whether we're still going to have some of the highest ratios in the state of inspection load to staff, or whether we'll be more closer to the middle of the pack.
That is our hope. This new environmental health specialist that we're bringing on board does satisfy a special request. It has taken several months to get an inspector to get hired, and I'm hopeful that May 1st she'll be here. And It's a great point, Commissioner Chang. I'm going to actually do some of the arithmetic and figure out what exactly our ratios will be with regard to the other 32 local public health authorities in Oregon, and then assess if our ratios are where they need to be moving forward.
When, Eric, if I may add, and I'm going to impress you with my technical knowledge of your area, I think, because it's an important area for us. Commissioners, when we came to the board during the fiscal year 22 budget planning and negotiations, at that point we shared some figures that reflected the reality of that time. So I think what we know from the federal guidelines, somewhere between 280 to 320 inspections per staff is what the standard is. And we were almost double that, or 80% more than that. So it's certainly that your approval of additional inspectors will help. Now, I do also want to emphasize something else here, which is environmental health does a lot more than restaurant inspections. In fact, we are now positioning ourselves to support the businesses and the communities with air quality, HVAC, and related areas that are of high demand. And frankly, there isn't enough supply from the private side to address it. So that's a service that we're going to be providing to the community per your approval of this particular position. So the dent in the inspection ratio is not going to be huge because most of the work for this person will be around air quality, smoke, fire, all that.
Nah, the services that there's insufficient capacity to provide from the private sector, will we be providing that service in a fee-for-service model? Or, I mean, will people then basically have the choice, like, well, I could go and hire a private contractor to do this, or I could wait until the county environmental health person is available, and then they can do it for me for free?
I'll offer the 30,000 foot view, and Eric, of course, will have the substance as usual. So, first of all, Commissioner, what you're raising is around sustainability model, frankly, which is part of the struggle with public sector and how do we balance equity and efficiency, and how do we make sure that the services we render match the revenues that come in to support those services. I think this is an important question to be raised with our budget officer, of course, and your good selves as to how we want to look into this matter or explore it further. I also believe that some of the businesses that we will be providing services to are not necessarily part of our licensure agreement. So we would have to look into how to make that relationship more formal so that there could be some sort of a fee structure that is put in place. But these are different, I think, considerations for all of us. I come from the school of thought that we should create sustainable models for public sector services. So I welcome your inputs. Eric, do you want to add to this?
Well, in answer to Commissioner Chang's question, we haven't set up any fee for service for an in-house indoor air quality expert that we're developing right now, a strategic plan to evaluate, do healthy, clean air assessments for vulnerable populations, whether that's childcare, congregate settings, assisted living facilities, any other sort of congregate setting, homeless shelters, where we can evaluate their HVAC system, their filtration, air exchanges, in response to whether it's COVID or wildfire smoke, to try to evaluate that. We are going to do that on a voluntary basis and not charge any money. This is the genesis of our program with regard to indoor air and clean indoor air quality, really specifically for vulnerable populations. But at the outset and for the first year or two, we have no intention of charging anybody. This will be on a voluntary basis.
And with a particular focus on these, these institutional settings where there's, we are concerned about indoor air quality for vulnerable populations. Okay, that helps me understand kind of who should pay and why. Thank you.
Okay, so we're expecting then the next time we hear from you, Eric, the 8% will probably be then like 98%. Don't you think? So as an optimist, we'll know that'll happen.
Hey, my fingers are crossed that number is going to be 98%, Commissioner Adair.
There you
Thank
go.
you very much.
COVID might have something to say about that too, so let's involve COVID in the discussions.
But the hospitalization today is down, it is down to 35 in St. Charles. So it is definitely trending the right way. That's really excellent to see.
But we only got 1 month left in the quarter.
Right. Well, that's good. All righty. Well, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric and Nahad. Next up, we'll touch on the objective to promote well-being through behavioral health and community support programs. I believe we have Behavioral Health Director Janice Garceau on Zoom with us to talk about behavioral health Oregon Health Plan clients.
Good morning still. Commissioners, Janice Garceau, Director of Behavioral Health for the record. I am talking with you about one of our many performance measures, but it's one that's really relevant for the county's goals as well, and that is the requirement and the goal of seeing Behavioral Health Oregon Health Plan clients within 1 week of their request for services. And we have historically been either at 100% or above 98% almost every single year that this has been measured, every single quarter. And for the first time in my tenure, we're well below that target. We are at 63%, and that is due almost exclusively to staffing shortages. So our access team, which conducts not all, but many or most of our intake assessments for new clients, is at 50% capacity. And some of our in-house clinical teams that receive clients are at reduced capacity. And that's caused us to make a decision to have a longer wait at the front door so that we don't end up in a situation where we have individuals in need of services who are open but not actually able to be assigned to a clinician or a team. The good news, and there is some good news in this picture, the good news is that we've hired 2 new access team clinicians. They start this month, so we're anticipating that by mid-March we'll be at 25% vacancy rate instead of 50% vacancy rate. But at this point, we're so far out for appointment times that we're able to offer to individuals that I'm not sure we'll be closer to the goal or the target this quarter. If you have questions, I can pause here. I can also talk with you a little bit about what we're doing internally to mitigate the situation.
What about the South County, Janice? Do you have a vacancy down there? How's the South County Behavioral Health Facility doing?
South County has a newly announced vacancy. We just were able to hire an access clinician for the South County location. Right now, they are 12 days out for first assessment appointments.
Janice, can you give us a sense for the downstream impacts of people not getting in to connect with a clinician sooner than later, right? Just, like if you can see somebody within a week versus seeing someone within 2 weeks, like are there could potentially really significant negative things happen with that person in that time period?
Yes. We first of all, I just want to assure you that we try very hard to prioritize all crisis assessments. So if we get a referral from our own stabilization and crisis programs, we prioritize those appointments for assessment. But the downstream impact inevitably is that often people who have to wait for a first appointment don't come to their appointment or find it more difficult to engage in services. That's sort of the lower risk threshold of downstream impact. Obviously, the higher risk situations, which we try very hard to be alert to and screen for, but in the end, a person not being able to access services could result in real decompensation of that individual in terms of their mental health symptoms and, of course, risk for harm to themselves.
That's important. That's important to recognize and understand, and you know, it you know, to me, creates more urgency around trying to figure out how to make recruitment easier or faster for behavioral health, because I know it's been really challenging.
It's been incredibly challenging, yes.
I think that's isn't that a nationwide issue, isn't it? All over the entire country is what I've been seeing, that behavioral health staffing is just so compromised at this moment in time when probably we need it more than ever. So Janice, if they can't see someone with an appointment, do you have them go to the stabilization center?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's
Absolutely.
something we can do.
Yes. And we have many teams that do fairly intensive outreach and engagement and support to individuals in the community pre what we call treatment. So our homeless outreach services team, many of our peer support specialists who are assigned to some of our intensive teams, our ESA program, all of these programs have staff who are regularly meeting, encountering and working to engage and support and connect individuals and services even before they've ever had what we call an access appointment, which is when they first come in and have an assessment. So there's a lot we do on the front end to try to do outreach, support, and engagement. And of course, people have access to crisis services, period, immediately, regardless of whether they're open in our services or not. You know, ultimately, what we don't want to see is individuals cycling through crisis or the ED or encounters with law enforcement because they're not open in services and engaged. I can say that the pressure has been more significant in our less intensive teams. So our outpatient clinics, there's been a longer wait. Our intensive teams, in many instances, have created their own internal ways to do quick assessments if they can't get a regularly scheduled assessment. So we have worked very hard internally to make sure that for our highest risk service populations, we're at least getting closer to the mark. So an example would be if you're looking for a regular access appointment and we think that you're someone who might be served an outpatient, you're going to wait 21 days for an assessment or 5 days for a screening. But if you're waiting for an assessment with our intensive services, we're typically able to get children in more quickly. That said, we continue to experience staff leaving for the private sector and having difficulty recruiting staff to work in these really difficult, high volume, complex community mental health roles when there's so much private sector opportunity.
And that's
I feel like a Debbie Downer right now. I want to offer some hope, but this is our current reality.
Very important things to understand and to plan around. So don't feel bad about delivering the straight poop.
Yeah. We are we are working very hard, and we have had, I think I've called this out before, but our county's Human Resources Department has worked incredibly hard and incredibly fast in collaboration with us to do everything that we're allowed to do within the scope of labor rules and HR rules to get people in quickly, to increase incentives, to help with incentives for shift coverage. We've just had really good partnership with HR on this problem, and hope that with some legislative fixes that are in the pipeline, things may look better over the next 6 to 18 months, but we will see.
That's the kind of answer, we will see. Yes, there is, it's got to get better, right? And thank you for being there. Thank you for being the leader of a very important department, and I know you worry about the challenges on a minute-by-minute basis, because it definitely hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
Janice, is there, so you were tracking that investment we made in, basically the public health workforce pipeline with COCC, right? So there will be peer support specialists that come out of that investment that, might actually come over and work on the behavioral health side, I'd imagine. But if there are, if we should be looking at other workforce training type initiatives to, I know that's not, there's no silver bullet, but there's all these pieces. There's training, there's compensation, there's, private sector competition, there's all sorts of stuff. But, if we can work on all of the aspects of this issue, firing on all cylinders, maybe, we'll get to a better place faster. So if there's, in that kind of workforce training arena, if there are initiatives we should be trying to accelerate or initiate at the local level, please keep us posted on that as well.
Yes, there really are initiatives. It is a multi-pronged strategy that I think we need to be engaged in, and there are opportunities for persons such as yourselves to help us. Obviously, the legislative path of some of the workforce bills is important to track, and of course, we've asked for support for some of those items. Getting into graduate programs and talking with them about why you should want to work in community mental health. Of course, I am going to be a biased salesperson, but I really have a deep belief that this is where mental health work is the most meaningful and important. All the things that you can do to support our county HR department in having the resources they need to work with us quickly and effectively to incentivize education. At the end of the day, we need master's level clinicians. We are thrilled about our peer workforce. We've done a lot to help develop that workforce. We're thrilled about our case managers. We cannot do this work without them. But the entire system is built on qualified mental health professionals, which requires a pretty high level of educational attainment. And we really want to be able to do things like tuition reimbursements and encourage the growth of our own professionals in our community. That actually helps us get closer to a more diverse workforce, frankly, to bring talented people up and help support their education. Anyway, I could say a lot on the subject. Obviously, I will try to make you aware of opportunities and really appreciate your being in this with us and the support.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice.
Laura,
Thank you.
Do you want to go into natural resources, I believe?
Thank you. The next objective under Healthy People is to help to sustain natural resources and air and water quality in balance with other community needs. And we have a couple updates on that today. The first will be from our county forester, Ed Keith, and he will touch on our Firewise program.
Greetings, Commissioners. Ed Keith, County Forester. Also would just recognize I'm being joined by Boone Zimmerly, who does a good lion's share of the work with our Firewise communities, and he's here to answer any questions you might have. I've just got a couple slides I'd like to share with you to kind of help tell this story. And so the performance measure we're looking at today is the Natural Resources Performance Measure focused on Firewise, and the goal is to maintain or increase our Firewise sites throughout the year. These have actually been increasing rather rapidly. In this latest quarter, we actually passed a pretty notable milestone of getting over the number of 50, and we landed on 52 Firewise sites at the end of the calendar year, the end of the quarter here. So that adds 10 Firewise sites in the first 6 months of this fiscal year 2022. So quite a lot of interest in this program with our, continuing fire risk and risk to communities. Those communities are really recognizing that and stepping up. And usually when we do get a call from a community, we do like to use Firewise as kind of a framework for them to work under. So Firewise USA is a national program that's sponsored by the National Fire Protection Association. And we use that as kind of a way to work with communities and get them pointed in the right direction. And I'll get to what that looks like. But we are sitting at, we were sitting at 52 Firewise sites. I think we've added 3 or 4 more actually since December 31st. That encompasses just shy of 16,000 residences. And since our first Firewise community in 2004, the total investment throughout all those communities is $10.6 million invested in work by those Firewise communities. So in order for these Firewise communities to stay recognized and active, they do have to have at least one work day and maintain action towards their reducing their risk, and they report on their investment annually back to NFPA. So we do have those figures that are collected by each community. I would also just recognize and thank the board for their support. Through the discretionary grant program this year, we had budgeted $100,000 for to incentivize some of this work and help these communities out with some of this fuel reduction work and defensible space work in the communities. And that has been allocated, and those projects have been planned. Most of them are still happening in the spring, so those will be completed here in the next few months, but that really does help us keep interest in this program going by being able to offer a relatively small amount of funds in what is overall a very large investment from these communities. And the other thing I would just like to say before I move on to the next slide is that this is really a partnership working with these communities. We work alongside the Oregon Department of Forestry and the local fire departments. So I just have the logo for the Chiefs Association, but multiple fire departments involved, as well as Boone through the activities of Project Wildfire to really work directly with these communities. So here's a list of some of our latest communities, and I just would draw attention to our Firewise story map. The web address is here at the top of the screen, bit.ly/Deschutes Firewise. It was a shortcut way to get to our learning more about our Firewise efforts in Deschutes County, and that'll really step you through why communities need to work together to reduce risks. It'll give a little bit on our fire history and where our fires are playing out in relation to our communities. It also has this map of our Firewise sites, and would just say that they are, and recognize they are spread out through the entire county. So from the Greater Redmond area and Black Butte Ranch, moving south through multiple communities, both within Bend, but also on the outskirts of Bend, and then further south, Sun River and Lapine. We do have these really widespread throughout the county. So really happy that communities throughout the county are interested in using this model to reduce their risk.
Ed, it's Commissioner Adair.
Yes.
I believe when I talked to Boone last that we actually have a couple more in process, and maybe we're going to be over 60 in not that long of a period of time. And that would
I
put
wouldn't
us
be
like,
surprised, yes.
top of the
I wouldn't be
fourth in the nation.
surprised. I know Boone has been out, even through the winter with communities that have interest in this, conducting the FireWise assessment. So that's kind of the first step, is that communities get in touch through either the fire district, through Boone and Project Wildfire, or through the Oregon Department of Forestry. And then we set up a date to walk around the community and do a risk assessment and kind of identify priorities for them to work on. And then once they form a board, and this will get at my next slide, we do a risk assessment. They then form a board and create an action plan based on that risk assessment. And then they move forward with at least one FireWise a day, which can be, creating defensible space or having an educational event, and then show that investment. And it's basically just 1 hour of volunteer work per residence. And most communities have no problem going above and beyond that requirement. Then they could be recognized as FireWise. So that we do have several in process, and I would expect at the end of this current quarter, I wouldn't be surprised if we topped out over 60, because again, we've added 2 or 3 since I submitted this performance measure, and we've had several other interests. I guess I'd just conclude before any other questions. Just want to make the point that in addition to these 5 points of what you really need to become FireWise, what you really need is people like Mike Mulligan, who's on the screen here. He has been working tirelessly at Eagle Crest on a project that is in process today, and it's going to come to completion, but we've been working through a FEMA grant, and he's really marshaled his community, and we've got a lot of other spark plugs out there in other communities as well. That's really what keeps our efforts towards FireWise going. So I just want to recognize Mike and all the other spark plugs in the communities like Mike that really make the difference in their community and make this a meaningful program. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ed.
I don't have any questions. Really exciting progress with adding FireWise communities. Thanks, Ed.
Yep, thank you.
And I did hear from the community in Eagle Crest that the people doing the job were actually incredibly respectful to the people that were living there and what needed to be done. And they were doing, their cleanup was clean, tidy, nothing left. Yeah, they were really, someone that it was apparently a good hire.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good comments, and they've had 5 or 6 volunteers working basically side by side with these contractors to make sure that this project moves forward. And I just hold that out as an example. And we have many more in other communities as well, that it really takes those residents that are passionate about this work to make it successful.
Thank you, Ed. Now we have solid waste.
Yes. So under that same objective, we have Solid Waste Director Chad Santola via Zoom, and he will provide an update on our recycling diversion rate.
Welcome, Chad.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chad Santola, Director of Solid Waste. The performance measure we're going to discuss with you today is working with solid waste service providers to increase diversion, recyclable collection rates for more recyclables. And we base that on a prior 3-year collection rate, and our current average is running about 64,000 tons per year. Before I get into the numbers, I want to kind of talk about where these numbers come from and how we use them. The diversion tonnages we report are based on recyclables collected by the Cascade Disposal and Republic Services on their curbside residential collection programs and their commercial recycling collection programs. Also, the recyclables we collect at the Not Landfill Recycling Center and our rural transfer stations is included in that number. We do report those same numbers to the DEQ for our annual reporting requirements to them, and they combine those numbers with other recyclable tonnages reported by other collection facilities in the county. An example would be like Schnitzer Steel. They don't report directly to us, they report to the DEQ. So when the DEQ gets all of our numbers plus the other recyclers in the county, they're compiled into an annual report. And the 2020 annual report is due out in the next couple months. They're about 2 years behind in their reporting cycle for the program. We're not quite as bad as them. We do report 1 quarter behind on our updates. So the second quarter update is actually the numbers for the first quarter of this fiscal year. So with that, the majority increase we saw in yard debris in collection of recyclables was in yard debris. We took in about or just over 21,000 tons of recyclables in the first quarter of this fiscal year, and the majority of that was in increases with yard debris. Another commodity to note, although the tonnage is smaller, but the percentage certainly is on the increase, is with corrugated cardboard. With the online shopping phenomenon, we're seeing a lot more cardboard coming through our facilities in the program. With yard debris, we saw that increase was about 1,700 tons over the prior quarter, and that kind of averages out to about a 17% increase for the period. And one of the things we're seeing, we're getting a little bit of preliminary feedback from our haulers and looking at our numbers that we may be seeing a little bit of a taper in the yard debris volumes coming in, so it may be a little bit lower than our projections for the year compared to last year. It was interesting that we were expecting when the pandemic started, we might see a decline in materials coming to our facilities, but to yard debris in particular, we saw a pretty substantial kick in it. Probably related to people sitting at home, being furloughed from work or doing their safe separation from everyone, and decided to take care of those projects around the house, including cleaning up the yard. So we had a substantial increase in traffic with yard debris coming to all of our facilities during that period of time. That's kind of a brief summary. The big increases in yard debris, we're seeing something with cardboard going on as well. Although the tonnage is smaller, the percentage is higher than what we typically see with them. So if you have any questions for me.
Just acknowledging something to keep an eye on. I was asked about, recycling on Friday morning, and, I explained some of the different things, but they just wanted to know, if we recycle, does it get thrown away anyways? I said, no, it doesn't. So it's just interesting people's view and vision on what's possible out there for the recycled streams.
That hasn't been an uncommon question. There was a report done on public broadcasting, I think it was nationwide, looking at recycling, and there was a little bit of misinformation that came out on that a lot of recyclables are disposed of. In Oregon, anything we collect curbside or at our recycling centers must be recycled. That is against Oregon state statute to dispose of those in a landfill. So, and I assure people when they inquire with us that everything they're putting in their can and everything coming to the recycling center is getting sent to recycling facilities.
Great.
So is the cardboard still, is there a value to it?
Cardboard, Sue can probably answer a little bit more detail on that. I should have introduced Sue. She's our management analyst, and she is the gatekeeper of all numbers for our department. And there's a lot of numbers out there. Sue can expand a little bit, but I believe cardboard generally is one of those things that does operate in the black for us.
That's what I believe. Historically, it did operate in the black, so that's good to know.
Yes, Sue Monette for the record, and yes, to answer the question right now, it is a positive and has been continuing in the black for a good year or so, if not more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Good to hear.
Chad, we were talking about, some months back, we were talking about the volume of yard debris and potentially the volume of yard debris increasing even more in coming years. How are you, do you have any kind of additional thoughts for us on how we are dealing with the current volume of yard debris and whether, we have sufficient capacity in the composting operation and other places to deal with that?
No, I've spoken with Rusty, the operation manager for Deschutes Recycling, about that. The curbside yard debris and yard debris that's collected at the recycling center go through the composting program. And since Rusty Davis came on board, he's made a number of improvements to their operation there. So we've given them a little bit more territory to work on out there. We expanded their area a little bit. So I think they still have some capacity available for increases. For us with the landfill, the yard debris we collected fire-free. Last year, we ended up disposing of about roughly half of it directly to the landfill. We just had to get that material out of the way to make room for operations. So we would kind of take it on a case-by-case basis. We'll see how the response is for fire-free this year. If we don't push it directly in the landfill for disposal, we'll grind it up and use it for alternate daily cover on the landfill. So we do get a beneficial use out of it. I think our conversation past was just the amount of time material sitting on the ground out here. And we can't consume it fast enough. We have run some risks of spontaneous combustion, which was something we struggled with a few years ago. So we try to be attentive to that. And certainly what's coming in from the rural transfer stations is part of that formula as well.
Thank you.
So do we have fire-free days yet determined or publicly
Yes,
announced?
we do. I had spoken with Ed Keith and Boone about that, and I should have on my calendar, but I do not. I'm going to have to dig up an email real quick here. Sue, do you have those handy off the top of your head?
I do. So not landfill, it's going to be April 30th to May 15th. And then at our rural sites, it'll be May 21st to June 4th.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So now people can start working on collecting their piles to go to the either not or to the rural
We may have
landfills.
scooped Boone's press release, but we'll try to apologize.
Okay.
That was going to be the big news.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I think it's great to get out there, and I'll coordinate with him and let him know.
Okay, thank you, Whitney. You know me, it's fire-free, and the more we can do, the better.
Oh, yeah.
It's personal
Clean it up.
responsibility. Gosh. And don't wear your brand-new jeans when you go to unload it. I learned that lesson last year. So, it was fun.
And hopefully we don't put half it directly into the landfill this year.
Truly.
That was more of a space challenge for us. I think we got a little bit larger area this year. One thing I've been discussing with Ed Keith about is there is a methane emission rule that has been promulgated this past year with the DEQ that's going to compel us to do a substantial expansion on our gas field. Commissioner Chang is on our committee that's reviewing proposals for a gas to energy project out at Not Landfill. We were going to have to find a new home for the local fire-free protection collection program, because when we do build out to meet these new emission requirements, there's going to be a substantial network of pipes and wells around the site, and there just simply is going to be enough open space to accommodate an event the size of Fire-Free. So we'll work with Ed Keith to find a solution for that before it it's upon us here.
Good to know. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Chad. Okay, it looks like.
Thank you.
I believe legal.
Yes, last but not least, under the objective to continue to support COVID-19 pandemic crisis response and community health recovery, we have our own county counsel, Dave Doyle, here with us to speak about their comprehensive legal support during COVID.
Okay, great, Commissioners. Sure, you know what I could start with is everything the county's been involved with that's COVID-related in any way at some point's come across legal's desk, or telephone calls and whatnot. Early on, those were 24/7. I was getting phone calls from Dr. George at midnight. You know, there were a lot of questions around quarantine, isolation. It seems like a long time ago, but 23 months ago, we just didn't know what we were doing, and we were learning as we went. So it was really 24/7. But you know, we supported everything and have and continue to support everything. Procurement, early on, there were issues about procurements and whether we could be buying certain types of PPE and certain types of supplies that were needed, and did we have to go through normal contracting processes. And of course, we had the board enact an order that allowed us to circumvent around some of that so that we could move a little more swiftly. The inquiries have certainly tapered off of late, happily. I'm happy to say that. But the reach was wide. You know, Eric Monet was talking about some of the investigations his staff did. Well, I was on the phone with Eric for many of those investigations on what they could and couldn't do and where they could and couldn't go. Same thing with some of our partners. St. Charles Legal and I were in contact on any number of instances. If you think about all the various vaccination sites, testing sites, if those weren't on county property, we had to have contracts. We had to have documentation in place with school districts or whatever sites we might have been working with. If we were using staff at any of the sites that we operated that weren't our staff, we had to have agreements with the people providing those staff to us. So it really was all encompassing, and I even had 1 or 2 phone calls from deputy DAs asking about certain issues associated with the county's orders and whether those crossed over and had criminal liability attached to them for people that weren't in compliance. So it has been all-encompassing, and it was early on a 24/7 type thing. And we remain available. Legal is available, if not myself, certainly one of the lawyers that works in the department's available 24/7 to any department head, to any obviously commissioners. You know, we try to provide that support as best we can. It's been an eye-opener. I think I told you in the past, I carried around in my trunk of my car for 20 some odd years the isolation and quarantine manual that I was handed my first day as a county council in 1994. Never thought I'd ever have to use it. And then 23 months ago, all of a sudden it became very real and very relevant. So although the majority of what we did was not to script from that manual, which goes to show you can put together all those manuals and they don't always guide you when events do occur. A lot of what we did was off script. But you know, certainly there was some beneficial information in those. But I always chuckled. I would have bet you anything that I was never going to have to use that thing, carrying it around in my trunk. I carried it in my trunk because I thought, you know, you're not always at work when something happens. So if it's in my trunk, it's either out in the parking lot or it's in my garage. So that was always the thinking with carrying that around in my trunk. Now it's in my office. You know, I live a mile away. I didn't used to live a mile away before I came here. So I carried it in my trunk. But no, that's it. And I will say that the staff in the legal department has become experts of sorts in all things COVID, all things quarantine. You know, another skill set that we probably didn't have 23 months ago that we do have now. So that's what I can share.
Great.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. And truly, you are available 24/7 or someone in your department. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave. So that concludes our Q2 updates for today, and we will be back for Q3.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Laura, maybe you can give us an update and see if some of those numbers are better, even if they're not doing the percentage. But I hate to think we're going to wait like 3 quarters to find out, oh, they did make their 98. So,
Sure, I can
you know, if
follow
you
up.
can just follow up with that, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
Whitney, item number 13.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Commissioners, the item that we have before you today is a discussion of the county's draft fiscal year 2023 goals and objectives. And so I have a few handouts that I'll provide to you, hard copies of. Staff prepared 2 separate draft versions for the board's consideration and discussion today, and we'll walk through both of those drafts with you. Our hope is to get your feedback in accurately presenting your goals and objectives that we'll then communicate to departments. Departments will use the goals and objectives, as you know, to develop their budgets and also their performance measures for next fiscal year. So this really is kind of the first step of our budgeting process for fiscal year 2023. But hopefully these drafts are helpful starting points for the board to have discussion. If we are able to get to a place where the board feels comfortable adopting goals and objectives today, that's great. And if staff needs to do some work and come back to you again with a revised version, we're certainly happy to do that as well. So circling back around to you today on this, I will also note staff has prepared a draft matrix that we'll be sharing with you. That encompasses board priorities that the board communicated and shared with staff at the at the Board of Commissioners retreat in January. And so we'll be seeking your feedback on that draft matrix and then bringing that to you for additional follow-up discussion outside of the discussion around specifically goals and objectives. So with that, I'll
Give me to pass it out before you.
I kind of did a strange.
Already got it set up for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
thanks.
So Commissioners, as we outlined briefly in the staff report for this item, there are 2, version 1 and version 2 are in your packet today. Version 1 includes housing-related objectives that fall under the Resilient County goal. And version 2 breaks out housing-related objectives underneath its own goal. And so that's really the primary difference between the 2 versions. If it's helpful, I have a red line copy that kind of shows you changes from fiscal year 2022 to 23, but I wanted to, at least to start, turn it over to you if you have feedback that you'd like to provide staff, and we can take it from there.
Thanks for putting these together. You know, we did have a good retreat day. We got these ideas out there. There was support for talking about housing and the county-owned land opportunities, so, and it is in both of these versions. You know, the big picture is safe communities and healthy people and resiliency and the cost-effective service delivery. So the big picture is on both of them, I would acknowledge.
Kind of one high-level question I'd like to ask is, in choosing whether to have a standalone housing stability and supports housing stability and supply section, or folding that into a resilient county, does it change anything for us in terms of, you know, what departments and their staff are doing on a daily basis? Or is it mostly a question of, you know, what kind of a public statement or symbolic statement we are making about housing, having this broken out as a bullet?
Yeah, Commissioners, I think it's mostly a symbolic statement of the board's priorities, if you want to emphasize it as a standalone goal. But I don't think the direction of the departments will change significantly.
And certainly in sort of the functionality of how a department would report project to you, that's going to be at the objectives level. The measure is always going to fall under the objective, and the objective is either going to be under either goal. So not a huge difference there.
I've been using the term workforce housing, and someone in our community wanted to know the definition of workforce housing. So, we have the affordable housing, but we actually have people that, we have employers that are truly short of workforce. So it's interesting, I remember from the, Youth Activity Center for the marijuana, that term was not identified, though, and truly, you don't want to use words that aren't identified. All I know is we need more housing that people can afford to live in and that want to work here. And I just think that's so important. If we went with version number 2, it perhaps is only symbolic, but I think it's a very important symbol of the world we live in today, and the fact that cross sections of all types of employers. I mean, is there any industry that's not affected by a shortage of workers today? I don't think I know of one. I mean, I'm sure there might be, but housing is part of when you want to work. It's really wonderful to be able to live where you work so that you're not driving for an hour one way. And actually living in Deschutes County and working in Deschutes County, I think is really, it's a good goal to have.
So we don't use that term workforce housing in here right now.
No,
But to your point of, placing symbolic importance, emphasis on housing, I would agree with you that I think we should, if operationally it doesn't make a difference to the departments and staff, I like the idea of making a symbolic statement that housing is a high priority for us.
So are you, Commissioner Dare, are you referring to version 2?
Yes, version 2, it's the 4th bullet point. There's 5 on that one, and there's 4 on the version 1. And so I tried to figure out what was the difference, and that was the difference.
That 4th goal, you are, yep.
I know, I did my little highlighter, and I'm going, okay. Let's see what I just think it's so important.
So, as I say, I mean, one of the realities I've concluded is that in the state of Oregon, we're very proud of our statewide land use system, our urban growth boundaries, the limiting of parcelization outside the cities. So we're talking housing stability and housing supply. But I've talked to a lot of people, and they just want some land. I just want my land. I want to be able to buy land, be able to build my house, and be able to do this. So, I don't want it to be stated here, just from my point of view, that, oh yeah, well, we just need to build housing for people, which is, and we heard about it this morning, didn't we? A 4-story apartment on a small parcel is very different than an acre available for somebody to purchase. So, I'm just acknowledging that. I don't know, just the word land may be appropriate in here somewhere. And if that's the big conflict, that we're going to save the environment, we're going to not allow people expansion, we're going to defend wilderness for environmental reasons or whatever. I'm just putting the big picture. We have population growth, something's going to be given here at some point. So I'm just acknowledging land is part of it.
Producing housing is more than land, and
well, that's what I'm saying. Housing is more than just housing on small parcels too.
So I wouldn't want to reduce this to a discussion of land supply, because there's a number of levers to pull to produce more housing, and one of the most important things that I got out of our visit with county commissioners from across the nation last week at the NACO conference was hearing from destination communities like ours in other states where they don't have Oregon's land use planning system, and hearing that they have the exact same problems that we do with housing availability and affordability. So, to me, that re-emphasizes that solving our housing problems is many, many factors. Land is one lever to pull, and it's in my opinion, probably not the most important one. So I guess I don't, if you, what you were suggesting was that we place greater emphasis on land supply under this housing heading, I would disagree with that.
Yeah, and I'm just acknowledging, yeah, that's very much a different opinion, and you and I can see it differently, so I've said my piece.
Well, because we're saying housing stability and the fact that Deschutes County is on the forefront of Senate Bill 391 for the ADU, I think it fits under this. And I know, Tanya, I know everyone is working so hard to get the fix so that we actually can go ahead with that on, 900 square feet, accessory dwelling units in our rural community. And we can legally, I believe, at some point in time, perhaps have up to 10,000, maybe. But, it is a big number, and it is really, hopefully it might be affordable housing.
And Commissioners, I would just suggest on version 2, the second bullet point, support actions to increase housing supply. It could be those levers. It could be land, it could be legislation, it could be, our goal was to have a term that encompassed a variety of actions.
Helpful. So I think if it sounds like we're leaning towards version 2.
So, my only other acknowledgement, this is a statewide system, as I say, we don't have a whole lot of leeway, decision space as Board of Commissioners for that land supply I was just referring to. When we are representing the people as a government, so the other mindset here could possibly be, well, if government creates housing for people, then people have houses. But, we want to have engaged, tax-paying, productive members of society, and I support the concept of government providing those cost-effective services for everybody. So, as I say, just the words again, making sure, because the same words could be read differently. That's all I'm acknowledging here. So, I don't know that Deschutes County, we've got Housing Works, we got federal tax credits, we have nonprofits wanting to put up housing. So I want to empower all that activity around us.
And I would like to acknowledge safe communities, the second bullet point, reduce crime and recidivism. Apparently, the city of Bend was having a car theft issue in 2020. They became aware of that, and they have actually brought the number down in 21. But in the county, I was made aware that this was happening. We were having like one car a day stolen. Now, there was a young gentleman who left his car running, and I wouldn't suggest anyone to do that because someone came and stole the car while he was picking up some food. So please, just know that you need to be aware of your surroundings, and I can't imagine that it's a pleasant thing to have your car stolen. He lost his passport, his ID, everything. So yes, so please, just be aware things are happening, and you want to be, you don't want to be one of those victims.
Thank you.
It looks like the big decision was A or B or version 1 or 2, and
Do we need a motion on it?
It would be, if you want to, if you wanted to adopt this version as it's been presented, that would be helpful for staff. And then we'll go ahead and finalize that and communicate that out to departments.
Okay, great.
If we're not, if it's not urgent that we kind of adopt this today, I feel like there's still a little bit of wordsmithing.
Yeah.
That version 1, version 2 question, that was the big, that was the big question. But I have there's a couple of spots where I want to ask about specific wording, but it's also, like wordsmithing is one of those things that it's sometimes you wonder whether it's worth it to take up Board of Commissioner meeting time to do, or whether you should do it offline. So I'm just not quite sure whether I should, kind of go down bullet by bullet or provide some thoughts later on.
Yeah, I would certainly defer to the board. If you'd like staff, we're happy to collaborate with you offline and come back with a revised V2 of version 2 for your consideration next week, or we could walk through those proposed changes now, just depending on the board's discretion.
Yeah, Commissioners, I would just suggest, since we have a team waiting for our executive session here coming up, that we work with you offline and then come back in a week or two, just so that we have enough time. But this provides a good general direction of where the board's going and something we can begin to work with departments. So I think we're in good shape with the direction today.
Yeah, I don't think any of the wordsmithing I'd have to suggest changes the meaning or the intent of any of this. It's just, you know, do we say houseless or at risk of houseless, or do we talk about housing insecurity?
That's
right?
great. Yeah,
which
no.
would actually even save us a line, which would help us stay on one page.
Yeah, we'll follow up with you as long as that works for the board and come back with a V2 for consideration.
Right, in a week or two. Okay, thank you, Whitney.
Thank you, commissioners.
So do we have any other items right now? Because we do have someone waiting, executive.
Just acknowledging letter from Deschutes Basin Board of Control asking for drought declaration, so that had come into our inbox.
Right.
We don't need to act on it today, but just, you know,
It's
letting
here.
Nick and Dave know that, yeah, that's something, it was a request officially.
I think, what did we have, 77 inches at Mount Bachelor today and maybe 61 at Hoodoo. So please keep snowing. For the,
Push that out to Sergeant Garibay. He was already.
Yeah, just acknowledging it here.
okay. Mr. Chang, did you have anything else?
No, I mean, one of the things I was going to mention was that NACO conference last week, and one of the most important things that I took away from that was hearing about the experiences of these destination counties in Colorado and Utah and Wyoming and Idaho that are dealing with housing affordability and housing supply challenges, just like we are. And there was a workshop where a whole bunch of strategies and policy approaches were shared during the conference, and I took a lot of notes. I haven't figured out how I'm going to package that up to share with other people yet, but there was some really interesting ideas to share with our community that I will be sharing at some point.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
We have one letter that is particularly timely.
Right.
And I can bring it back, or I can present it now.
No, you should present it now.
Okay. This is a draft letter of support for the board's consideration. Commissioner Adair received a request for this letter of support from Lilla Pine Community Health Center, and it's tied to funding opportunity that they're looking at pursuing. So Morgan Emerson prepared this draft for the board, and I'll go ahead and pass out copies.
Because I think they need it today, don't they?
Thank
Yes,
you.
today is the day. And I'm sure Alan would appreciate, yes.
I had a chance to read the request, but I didn't have a chance to respond, so thank you for working on it.
Thank you.
But I've heard of the Cow Creek Foundation funding other items in the area, you know, so it's a path of communication for Southern Deschutes County, and so that foundation, you know, has funded other things. So it's pretty exciting to know that yeah, they might be able to come up with some dollars for client transports in La Pine.
Yep.
So are you supportive then?
I'm supportive.
Can I just ask, this would be to transport clients to the clinic from various locations, or do we have a sense of?
You know, Commissioner Chang, I might need to follow up with you on that. The letter looks like it references patient transportation to clients, and I'm unclear which direction that would be occurring.
Yeah, it would be great to know that, but like I'm happy to to vote in support of the letter
Okay.
regardless.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we need an official vote? A motion?
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Sure. I move approval of a letter of support for Lapine Community Health Center's request to the Cow Creek Umpqua Indian Foundation for grant program funding to help support patient transportation needs.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
The chair votes yes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Whitney. Okay, so do we now need to go into executive